Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone, to the February 10th Oceanside Planning Commission meeting. There's a big crowd today. We're going to kind of emotionally charged issue. So whatever happens tonight, this is wherever this goes, this isn't the end. There's a kick at the can for whichever side it goes, because the appellate court is the city council. So we just want to have a good meeting, an orderly meeting. A couple of housekeeping rules. The fire department has asked that we just keep single file, which everybody is, it looks like, against the wall. So if there was a fire, that we could exit expeditiously. And I think the folks that are in the back, out in the audience, if you want to come up and speak, you'll have to come inside to do that. So Mary Sue will call your name and you'll have time to come up. And when we do call names, we will we'll have two at the counter. So I think those are the rules. We'll get to that in a minute. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Dodds, would you lead us, please?
Everyone place your hands on your heart and recite with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Planner, could you call roll, please?
Certainly. Chairman Morrissey.
Here.
Vice Chair Malik.
Here.
Commissioner Rosales.
Here.
Commissioner Balma.
Present.
Anthony.
Here.
Commissioner Dodds.
Present.
And Commissioner Ogden.
Here.
I'll let the record show that we have 7 commissioners present and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Mary Sue, do we have any communication on matters not on the agenda?
Yes, Chair Morrissey, we do have one slip, it looks like, tonight. Jimmy Knott. I know Jimmy's in the lobby, so if you'll come on in, Jimmy, and you get your 3 minutes.
Chair, Commissioners, Jimmy Knott, 127 Cherry Lane. I just wanted to share something I've been dwelling on for the past weekend here. I was reading an article that elucidated scripture to secular, and what it had to say was very simple. It was going back to Psalm 23 and said, you know, it was one specific portion, and it goes back to, you know, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And what happens is that the rod, people don't really realize, but a rod was a government issue type of measurement. And the staff itself was an honorary appointment for people got with the shepherds and everything. And I was reading about this, and what was really exciting was thinking about what your jobs are. And you have the law, which is like the rod. It is a government issue guideline that you have to go by. And that guideline in our country is established by the people. And I hope that you will take and really seriously think about that, is that it is something that is very comforting to know that we have set established principles, not by a king who could take and ad hocly just rule something, issue a edict, and that's the way it goes. Something that is very precise, a measure. And on the other hand, a staff, an honorary appointment that you as commissioners, I've sat in your seat, and once a commissioner, always a commissioner. And when you go around later on in life, someone says, Commissioner, your ears pick up and your mind switches. You have to put on a different hat. And you immediately change your mind to where you have to be impartial. And I hope that you can do that tonight and every night. And I thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Knott. And I think what we see here tonight with everyone here, that's democracy is working. Everybody that wants to speak can speak. There are rules to what we abide by up here. And I can tell you that everyone that's at this dais takes their job very seriously. And we have to make decisions that sometimes, many times, aren't popular. It's kind of like a golf shot. Every golf shot makes somebody happy, it seems. So anyway, but we do the best we can, and we're not perfect, but we do take this job seriously. So with that said, let's approve the minutes of the last meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, approve.
Second?
Second.
Let the record show that the motion passes 6-0 with Commissioner Dodds abstaining.
I see nothing on the consent calendar nor the transportation items. So now it's time for a public hearing. And item number 4 is the consideration of a development plan, conditional use permit, variance to allow the construction of a warehouse, manufacturing, and office facility on 31.79 acre site located at 250 Eddie Jones Way. And if I could get disclosures, Commissioner Dodds.
Read the staff report, familiar with the area. I did drive by the area, and I did read some of the letters that were provided to us.
Thank you.
Extensive staff report, one of the biggest. I also read the many emails from so many of you. Thank you for sending all that in. And also walked the site today and talked to some neighbors, so really tried to get a feel for the area.
Read the staff report, read the significant amount of emails that were sent to us, visited the site, and familiar with the area.
Yes. Same for me.
Pretty much the same for me. Read the staff report, well put together. Thanks, Rob. I was very interested in the economic analysis, and I think we all got a copy of that report in front of us this evening, so I looked through that. Extensive emails. Again, like Louise said, thank you, everybody, for voicing your concerns and opinions. And then I did a site visit as well.
Same thing, site visit, walked the neighborhood, tried to envision what that would look like fairly extensively, both from the north and the south, and also read the numerous emails, and thank you for sending them. There were a lot of those there as well. And I also talked to some neighbors as well, and talked to some people in my area where I reside about this particular situation.
Pretty much the same. Staff report, the numerous emails and correspondence, as well as walking the site, very familiar with the area. So again, thank you for your correspondence.
Thank you. You may proceed, Rob.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Planning Commissioners. I'm Rob Demahowski, Principal Planner with the Planning Division, and here this evening to present the Eddie Jones Warehouse Project, as we refer to. The project site is a 31.79 acre site located at 250 Eddie Jones Way, and it was within the airport neighborhood planning area. Immediate surrounding land uses consist of the San Luis Rey River to the north, industrial zone land to the west and the east, and the Oceanside Municipal Airport to the south. The airport neighborhood is centered around the Oceanside Municipal Airport and is bisected by the San Luis Rey River to the north and State Route 76. To the north of the river are single-family subdivisions, Prince of Peace Abbey, open space, and a variety of general industrial uses off of West Airport Road. And to the south of Highway 76 is a light industrial park and the Mission Avenue commercial corridor, and the future Ocean Camp project is also located to the east. The project site has a general plan land use designation of light industrial and a zoning designation of limited industrial. Development is regulated by Article 13 of the zoning ordinance. The site is also within the airport area, influence area of the airport, and subject to the airport land use compatibility plan. As shown on the zoning map, the airport neighborhood includes a variety of residential, industrial, commercial, institutional, and open space zoning. The project site was previously zoned M1 and dates back to the early 60s. The project site was originally developed in 1966 and 67 by the Deutsch Company, who built a 172,300 square foot facility specializing in electronic connectors for the defense industry. TE Connectivity purchased a plant in 2012 and specialized in industrial plating and electronic connectors for defense, aerospace, and marine industry. The plant sold in 2021 and was demolished a year later. Based on the history of soil contamination, the applicant initiated a CLARA agreement. And under the California Land Use and Revitalization Act, known as CLARA, is a program intended to promote cleanup and redevelopment of highly contaminated properties by allowing a property owner to enter into a voluntary agreement with the California Department of Toxic Substance Control. In return, the owner receives liability protection. The historical use of large volume of hazardous substances and petroleum products in the manufacturing process has resulted in contaminated soil on the site, and the applicant has entered into a CLARA agreement and intends to implement a response plan to remediate soil contamination after approval of the response plan by the Department of Toxic Substance Control. The project application was initially filed in January of 2022, and that proposal was for a development plan and conditional use permit for a 566,905 square foot warehouse manufacturing distribution facility with 114 truck bays and 60 trailer parking spaces. In 2023, the draft environmental report for the project was released for the original proposed project. As required by CEQA, the draft EIR analyzed 3 project alternatives, including a multi-building alternative. Based on public comments in response to the DER and public outreach efforts, a multi-building and truck bay reduction alternative was included in the final EIR as a variation of the multi-building alternative. Staff analyzed the MBTRA alternative, as we'll call it, and is recommending exclusive consideration of this alternative by the Planning Commission. The project being considered this evening shall be referred to by that acronym, and the original project with the original single building warehouse will be referred to as the proposed project as analyzed in the EIR. The project is comprised of 3 components: a development plan to allow the construction of a warehouse manufacturing distribution and office facility with 4 separate buildings totaling 497,822 square feet, and also called the MBTRA. A conditional use permit to allow 4 industrial buildings for distribution and storage purposes with square footage greater than 50,000 square feet, and a conditional use permit to allow the 4 buildings to have truck terminals with more than 6 heavy trucks on the premises at a given time, and a variance to allow a flood wall to exceed the maximum height of 8 feet. The MBTRA project would consist of 4 shell buildings intended for limited industrial uses. The buildings would range in size from 109,660 square feet to 134,015 square feet. Each building would feature 12 to 18 truck bays for a maximum of 56 bays divided between all buildings. A total of 593 parking spaces would be provided on site to accommodate a combination of manufacturing, storage, office uses. And truck terminals would be located on the interior facing elevations in an east-west direction and screened by a 19 to 20 foot high screen wall on the end caps of each building. Access to the site would be provided from both Benet Road and Alex Road via Highway 76. Trucks entering and exiting the project site would be limited to the Benet Road access point, and trucks would be prohibited from traveling north on Benet Road, north of the river into the adjacent neighborhood. Site features would include a dedicated right-hand turn lane for trucks entering the site, 30-foot wide drive aisles around the perimeter of the site, pedestrian walkways throughout it, and a new sidewalk on the Benet frontage would be provided along the entire frontage connecting to the San Luis River Trail. A connection would also be provided on the Alex Road frontage. For landscaping, the project would have 23% lot coverage, and the landscape palette would include a variety of trees and shrubs highlighted by California sycamore, coastal live oak, and bay laurel. The 4 buildings would be designed in a modern light industrial style with a variety of features to break up wall planes and create visual interest. Each building would range in height between 24 to 45 feet, with lower heights in proximity to the airport. The corners of the buildings would apply aluminum storefront window systems to distinguish office and warehouse components. As provided in Article 41 of the zoning ordinance, a conditional use permit is required for certain use classifications having unusual site development features or operating characteristics requiring special consideration so that they may be designed, located, and operated compatibly with uses on adjoining properties and in the surrounding area. A CUP, as its name implies, imposes special development requirements in the form of conditions of approval to ensure the use will not be detrimental to its surroundings. A CUP does not rezone the land, and uses authorized by a CUP are found allowable in the base zoning district if the CUP complies with the required findings for approval. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for 4 industrial buildings with storage area exceeding 50,000 square feet and to have more than 6 heavy trucks on the premises at one time. Contrary to common belief, the CUP does not regulate the actual number of truck bays, but regulates the number of trucks allowed on the premises at one time. The number of truck bays is often associated with the anticipated number of trucks and trailers on the premises. The MBTRA would include warehouse space ranging in size from 73,508 square feet to 90,069 square feet. Building 1 and 2 would have 12 truck bays each. Building 3 would have 14, and Building 4 would have 18 for a maximum of 56 truck bays. This elevation detail for Building 1 identifies the proposed truck bays and truck terminal area. The image also provides an example of a typical truck bay with roll-up doors in a property over in Ocean Ranch. The applicant is also requesting a variance to exceed the maximum height of 8 feet and to construct a 7.9 to 9.9 tall flood wall around the perimeter of the property. The project is located adjacent to the San Luis River and is within a special flood hazard area. An existing earthen flood levee was previously constructed to protect the site from flooding, but the levee has yet to be certified by FEMA. The city is currently working with FEMA to get that certified, but it is not considered a certified flood protection facility. Raising the site above the base flood elevation would not be feasible. Therefore, the applicant worked with FEMA and the city to propose alternative flood mitigation, and the wall would be constructed of a decorative masonry block style. As previously noted, the MBTRA was incorporated into the final EIR and is the preferred alternative project compared to the original proposed project with a single warehouse and 114 truck bays. The MBTRA includes several features that make it the preferred alternative, including a reduction in overall building square footage, 4 multi-tenant buildings rather than 1 large building to allow greater variety of potential uses, a reduction of truck bays from 114 to 56 divided amongst 4 buildings, the removal of the 60 truck parking spaces for trailers, and 19 to 20-foot high screen walls would be at the end of each building to screen the truck terminal areas between each building. For comparison purposes, the MBTRA would retain similar development features, including height with reduced lot coverage, increased landscaping, and maintaining the 100-foot riparian buffer from the river. A local transportation study was prepared for the project by LOS Engineering, and a memorandum was also prepared for the multi-building alternative. As represented in that memorandum, the MBTRA would introduce 1,286 average daily trips compared to the original 1,695 ADT with a single building, larger square footage configuration. This would represent a reduction of 409 ADT, or a 24% reduction. For heavy truck trips, the average daily trips would be 140, with anticipated 11 ADT during AM peak hours from 7 to 9 AM, and 8 trips between PM peak hours from 4 to 6 PM. And in conclusion of that study, traffic impacts at State Route 76 and Benet would result in a cumulative traffic impact, and a recommended fair share monetary contribution would be required to address potential impacts. Community outreach was a significant component of this project. The applicant initiated efforts in accordance with the city's enhanced notification policy, which is intended to promote public participation. Outreach efforts included the applicant establishing a project website, hosting 4 meetings, both in person and virtually, one-on-one meetings, as well as small group discussions. As shown by the attendance this evening and the numerous comment letters received, there has been significant public involvement in this process and input received. Staff has received several hundred letters in opposition to the project since the initial application was submitted between 2022 and 2025. For tonight's meeting, the Planning Commission has received well over 100 emails and correspondence, which has provided with the staff report and also forwarded directly to you for comments received after publication. And I'll mention, while a majority of comments were received from residents in the adjacent neighborhood to the north of the river, there were also a significant number of comments received from residents at the city outwide who use Highway 76. In a summary of the key community concerns, focus on traffic impacts, future tenants, pollution related to air and noise pollution, safety and emergency services, and habitat impacts. Community members expressed concern that truck traffic from the project would impede traffic flow on Benet Road and lead to additional congestion on Highway 76 when combined with the Ocean Camp project. The local transportation study analyzed both ADT for cars and trucks, and it identified cumulative traffic impacts at SR 76 and Benet Road. The MBTRA alternative would reduce the overall ADT by 24%. In addition, project features including a dedicated right-hand turn lane would reduce congestion on Benet by allowing trucks to merge to the right to enter the site rather than block the northbound travel lane into the neighborhood, and no trucks would be allowed north of the river. Community members commented that the applicant should have disclosed the future tenant of the project to allow the community to fully assess impacts of the project. The city does not require an applicant to disclose a tenant as part of the entitlement application, and with a standard application, an applicant typically declares a specific land use, and development requirements are based on the proposed land use type in the entitlement process. The shell building design would allow flexibility for a variety of uses that are allowed under that limited industrial category that the applicant is applying for under where manufacturing, warehouse, distribution, and office uses. And within that, there would be flexibility on a variety of uses that comply with the conditions of approval. And all future tenants would be subject to the limited industrial district and project-specific conditions. Concerns were expressed regarding potential air and noise pollution generated by the project from semi-trucks, service trucks, forklifts, and employee vehicles that would impact the community and the San Luis Rey River. There was an air quality study conducted for the project as part of the EIR, and the daily operational emissions were determined to not exceed San Diego Air Pollution Control District's significant levels. Mitigation measures and project design features were incorporated into the project as part of the mitigation monitoring program to reduce emissions, and as noted in a alternative memorandum prepared for the project alternative, the reduced project is anticipated to have less emissions based on the reduced square footage and reduced ADT. For noise pollution, concern with that the facility would generate excess noise, a technical noise study was prepared and determined that the project would comply with the city's noise ordinance, and a reduction in operations noise based on fewer loading docks, as well as the addition of the screen walls next to the truck terminals. Community members expressed concern that truck traffic from the project would impede vehicle access on Benet Road and pose a safety hazard for pedestrians, bicyclists, and skateboarders. There's also concern that increased traffic from the project would hinder evacuation and emergency vehicle access during a fire or other emergency. A wildlife evacuation study was prepared by the applicant for the project, and the applicant consulted with both the Oceanside Fire Department and Police Department during the preparation of that study. It evaluated the project's consistency with emergency evacuation plans and response plans, and in conclusion of that study, it was determined that the project would not eliminate the existing evacuation routes or inhibit emergency access during an emergency scenario. And project features including the addition of sidewalk on Benet would also increase pedestrian connection, and no trucks would be allowed to access Alex Road, and there was concern with traffic adjacent to the skate park and using Alex. That road would be limited to the existing roadway on Alex Road to the project limited to passenger vehicles. And finally, there was concern that the project would have impacts on wildlife along the San Luis Rey River corridor. A biological report was prepared for the project, and the site was previously disturbed as it was developed with the former manufacturing facility. The biological report, based on a field report, determined that no special status species were observed on the property, and potential impacts would be addressed with mitigation measures identified in the EIR. In addition, the 100-foot biological buffer along the edge of the riparian habitat adjacent to the river would provide additional buffering for sensitive species if present. The alternative project is found consistent with the land use policies of the light industrial land use designation with the objective to provide and protect industrial land that can accommodate a wide variety of low-intensity uses capable of being located adjacent to residential areas with minimal buffering or attenuation measures. The MTBRA alternative was designed in compliance with the zoning regulations and is consistent with the design and scale of the adjacent industrial uses in the airport neighborhood, and is also buffered from the residential area north of the river with the river itself, proposed landscape with the project, the addition of the flood wall, as well as the design of the building. This property is one of the last remaining vacant industrial zone sites or repurposed sites in the city's industrial land use inventory, and development of the site into a multi-building industrial project in accordance with the CLARA agreement would optimize the redevelopment potential of the site and provide an opportunity for a variety of industrial uses as well as employment opportunities. The energy and climate action element of the general plan requires new development to supply a portion of its energy demand through renewable sources and encourages new development to provide shade trees. The project, as proposed, would provide on-site solar system to offset the energy demand, and the landscaping would provide, as proposed, a 14% tree canopy compared to the minimum of 12%. And the airport land use compatibility plan, based on the site's location within the safety zone, the Airport Land Use Commission of San Diego County reviewed the project and found it consistent with the Oceanside Municipal Airport ALUCP, and the project is compatible in terms of safety, noise, airspace protection, and overflight. And it was also found consistent in terms of maximum height, lot coverage, setbacks, and noise compatibility. The project was reviewed in accordance with the development regulations of the limited industrial district requirements of the zoning ordinance. The multi-building design orients the building to adequately screen loading and maneuvering areas, the perimeter landscaping, enhanced tree plantings, and 100-foot wildlife buffer would provide additional attenuation measures to ensure compatibility with surrounding land uses. The project is found compatible with the airport because light industrial uses don't conflict with airport operations, and the project complies with the buffer and height requirements of the ALUCP. The proposed truck terminals are incidental to each of the proposed buildings, and the CUP, as conditioned, imposes special development standards to ensure the use will not be detrimental to its surroundings. Key provisions of the approval would include trucks and trailers. Parking shall only occur at approved truck bays. So if there were 56 truck bays, only 56 trailers or a combination of trucks could be parked on site. No trucks or trailers could be parked elsewhere on the property. No truck or travel would be permitted on Benet Road north of the river or Alex Road. A traffic management plan would be required to be submitted to the city's traffic engineer for review and approval prior to building occupancy. And finally, a facilities management plan with a good neighbor policy would be required prior to occupancy based on the facility has not declared a tenant. This requirement would be required to ensure that the future tenants comply with any operational characteristics, are aware of the conditions of approval, and base their operations on those operational characteristics provided as mitigation or the project design features. The proposed trucking terminals as designed with 56 truck bays divided among all 4 buildings. As conditioned, trucks and trailers will be limited to parking at the approved bays. All trucks will access the project site from Benet Road, which is considered a secondary collector and an acceptable roadway for truck traffic. Trucks would be prohibited from traveling north on Benet Road. The proposed buildings as designed will screen truck maneuvering, loading areas from adjacent neighborhood to the north. Consistent with the number of truck bays, the proposed warehouse square footage for each shell building would allow flexibility for a variety of limited industrial uses subject to the conditions of approval. The proposed conditions of approval, mitigation measures, and project design features identified in the EIR for the MBTRA would ensure that the project not be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. A variance is intended to resolve practical difficulties that may result from the size, shape, or dimensions by allowing deviation from development standards. The requested variance would help resolve practical difficulties of redeveloping the site by allowing increased height of the flood wall for additional flood protection and to allow for proper grading. A variance is warranted as provided in the findings, and added benefit of the wall would be the additional screening of the site from adjacent uses. An EIR was prepared for the project and identified significantly potential impacts to air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, traffic and circulation, and tribal cultural resources. The DEIR was released on October 23, and a total of 80 comments were received and responded to. Based on public comments received for the DEIR, the MBTRA is included as an alternative as in the EIR as the preferred alternative, meeting most of project objectives while lessening potentially significant environmental impacts. As provided in the technical appendices to the FEIR for the MBTRA, the reduced project represents a less intense project than the proposed project and would further reduce environmental impacts. Implementation of the MBTRA conditions of approval and mitigation measures contained within the MMRP, no significant impacts are anticipated. Staff finds the MBTRA project consistent with the city's policies of the general plan and requirements of the zoning ordinance and requisite findings for approval. The proposed land use and design of the project is consistent and compatible with existing industrial development in the vicinity of the Oceanside Municipal Airport and the surrounding area, with an emphasis on preserving and repurposing underutilized industrial land. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission, by motion, certify the environmental impact report and adopt the associated findings of fact and mitigation monitoring and reporting program by adopting the Planning Commission resolution and approve development plan, conditional use permit, and variance for the multi-building and truck bay reduction alternative project by adopting the Planning Commission resolution with findings and conditions of approval attached. This concludes my presentation. I am available for questions. And we have the applicant and the applicant's project team with technical representatives available for questions as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That was a great presentation. Commissioner Rosales.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob, for that presentation and the staff report. I had a bunch of questions, but I'm going to start with a couple random ones. When I was reading through the staff report and all the information, I was thinking to myself, boy, there's going to be a lot of additional traffic on Benet Road. You know, who's going to be impacted by the maintenance of that additional traffic? So you had an element in the staff report and in your presentation about the fair share monetary contribution required for that impact. And it's in our resolution, so thank you for putting that in there. $50,000 was the amount that the developer is supposed to contribute for the truck impacts. So having an engineering background, I thought, oh, I'll throw a number at this and calculate what does that mean per square foot. So about 10 cents per square foot for the facility. And the language in the resolution doesn't imply that it's a continuous contribution. It's sort of a one-off. So can you explain? It sounds like this is probably tied to a city policy. So maybe you can help me understand where did that number come from and how is that developed and so forth.
Commissioner Rosales, that is correct. It would be a one-time fee, and the fair share contribution is typically coordinated based on between the city traffic engineer and staff and the applicant's traffic team to determine an appropriate adjustment for a fair share contribution towards a traffic-based impact. And a specific, I'd like to further elaborate on that with the city traffic engineer to provide a better explanation than as far as the methodology for determining the fair share fee itself.
Okay.
I'm happy to elaborate on that.
Yeah, and a second part of that question would be, or what I noticed in the resolution, that if that money is collected, it can be used anywhere in the city for traffic improvements, which I thought was interesting too. So yeah, if the traffic engineer could, before we call the traffic engineer up, the variance on the wall is meant for flood control, and I guess I'm not a flood control engineer type, but I guess the first thing that crept in my mind was if a wall that large is constructed, and there's a flood, doesn't that shift the flow to other areas? It keeps it out of this development, but was that analyzed, what that might do to other areas, or is that not a concern?
Commissioner Rosales, the flow was analyzed as part of consideration of that design. and I would defer to the applicant's engineer who is available tonight to further elaborate, and our city engineer or a representative is also available to further explain the flooding and how that would work downriver.
Yeah, that works for me. So maybe the traffic engineer.
Yeah, why don't we, before we do that, maybe, does anyone have questions for, Jay, go ahead.
Hi, Ron. Looking at the heavy truck trips, 140 average daily trips, and I believe in the review, in the paperwork that you've provided, there is, the traffic study stated that that area was already scored as an F. Is that correct? So we're, like the last project we were looking at, we're going from a F to a bigger F in terms of scoring for traffic impact in this area. Is that a fair statement?
Vice Chair Malik, I'd like to verify the number there. Generally, that is the case where it's not, there's no improvement occurring. It is within that D level, or in some cases going to a cumulative impact that would further reduce the level of service.
And kind of going along those same lines in terms of traffic and traffic control, I understand the right turn lane for ingress, but for egress out of that facility with, let's just take 50% of the average daily trips and 70 outbound, 70 inbound as a common factor. Any mitigation or any plan to manage the left turn exit out of the facility? Or is there, I didn't see any specific road widening, any center lane, anything that would kind of help to mitigate the impact on traffic?
Vice Chair Malik, my understanding is there would be a stop sign and a typical left turn onto Benet. There would be not enough width to provide any additional improvements on that side. And the applicant may be able to elaborate on what are the design of the right-hand turn lane and the constraints that we're dealing with in terms of the width of Benet Road.
Okay. And one of the key conditions of the CUP is the traffic management plan. Is that only done upon completion of the project? Is it done by the developer or the tenants? If it's done by the developer prior to any tenants being there, because it could potentially be a period of time before the facilities are occupied and you actually have tenants in there using it, so impact may be not fully appreciated. But kind of how would that, and I guess along with that, could that or would that potentially include truck idle? And is there any consideration with this to look at quiet hours, which I've experienced in another line of work where I've had to move about 250 trucks a day across a 3-state area and having to deal with residential areas where we could not have a delivery vehicle idle for any period of time. Literally, they had to shut down. So were any of those issues, that's kind of a multifaceted question, but that's what I'm asking.
Vice Chair Malik, the first part of that, the traffic management plan would be tenant-based, and typically we would request that to be submitted at the time of either a tenant improvement or potentially a business license. That's typically when we determine when a tenant, and the content of that would ultimately be determined by the city traffic engineer and the city planner to make sure the content is appropriate for the use. As far as conditions of approval related to hours of operation, that ties in more to a conditional use where without a specific tenant, there is no condition as of now to limit hours of operation. It'd be based on tenants, and there's different types of operations, so that was not included as a proposed condition without knowing what type of tenants or uses would be occurring at certain hours. And then with operational-wise, the facilities management plan or even the traffic management plan, there are project design features that are included as an attachment to the mitigation program that would require trucks not to idle. There's refrigeration units. They'd have to have plug-ins, so there's no equipment running and those are addressed in the project design features, which are not considered mitigation, but they're voluntary project features derived from the California Department of Justice had a memorandum on warehouse centers and best management practices. Those were derived from,
Yeah,
from
I've
that
experienced those as
source.
well. So the design process, the design did have plugins for refrigerated units because it doesn't appear to be these are refrigerated warehouses. So is that a condition, a further condition for the tenant to
Correct.
retrofit? Okay.
That would be correct. So that project, that would be a condition for any, during the tenant improvement, that any proposed use would be evaluated and subject to those conditions. And those would be tied into the facilities management plan and recorded on the property as a deed restriction.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Ogden?
Good evening. I have a question. In reading the number of emails, there was a letter that came across dated February 10th from an attorney in Sacramento. His name is Donald Mooney, specifically talking about the final EIR and its failure to adequately address the comments regarding short-term emission rates means the city has failed to fully consider and address the air quality impacts associated with the proposed project. In connection with that, he sent a letter from EPS Environmental Permitting Specialist dated February 6th, which also indicates that it's going to create ongoing exceedance of standards. My question is, how do we answer this, and has anybody looked at this?
Commissioner Ogden, yes, indeed, the comment was received and looked at, and those comments were forwarded to the applicant's team and the preparer of the EIR, including the air quality study. And those comments were initially addressed in the response to comments section of the EIR. And I would recommend the applicant is available and would be able to elaborate on the nature of those comments and how they were addressed in the final EIR.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it was addressed. I don't want to open that up, but I just want to make sure it is. Because it seems to me that traffic, air pollution, and noise seem to be the big issues about this particular project. Thank you.
Commissioner Louise Balma.
That's good. Yeah, that's right. I have a question about how the riparian buffer was established, because it looks like it's mostly on the existing bike trail and the Department of, whoever owns that whole, what is that, the berm that goes up and then the bike trail's on top. So all of it's pretty much there. There's just a little bit that kind of comes onto the property of this project, because I know that it said that he had to plant native plants and everything. So how is that going to be handled with most of that riparian buffer is in someone else's land?
Commissioner Balma, that is correct. The portion of it is within the floodway of the river as well as the property. The biologist determines the edge of that riparian habitat based on the site-specific conditions. And generally, it's based on the improvements within the existing buffer. So there's the bike trail and additional improvements. So there are some improvements that are considered allowable in a portion of the buffer, and then others that are not. And with that, again, we had the applicants, the biologist will be able to elaborate on the specifics on the methodologies there. They have to follow on the.
I always thought that the riparian buffers always were on the land of whatever the project was on, and not using like a bike trail and everything else to be part of the 100 feet. I mean, usually when we've had a project in the past, it's been on the developer's land having to go back from the river. In this case, it's
Commissioner Baum, I'm
bike
happy to
trail.
elaborate on that,
Yeah.
response from Rob. So typically, the 100-foot buffer is measured exactly as it's stated, from the edge of where the habitat occurs, and it's measured outward. So often, the projects you have seen may have been maybe river adjacent or habitat, sensitive habitat adjacent. And so the buffer aided into the project site. We had a project just north of here known as Rio Rockwell, where they had a 100-foot buffer incorporated into that project because it was immediately adjacent to sensitive habitat. So here we have a built condition where we have a levee, we have a bike trail, we have more levee, and then we have the river itself, and that's where the riparian habitat starts. So that's how we start measuring the distance away from it.
So planning that buffer is only going to really occur on that little strip of land that's kind of like just from the property line to just where the wall starts, where the
So as an example, had they not utilized the 100-foot riparian buffer, the buildings could have actually been closer to the trail and closer to the sensitive habitat. Because they've started measuring from the edge of the
Okay.
existing habitat, they placed the buildings further away from the river's edge than it otherwise could be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? I see none, so thank you, Rob. Would the applicant like to address the dais? And you have 20 minutes, so are you going to, you can take 5 minutes and come back later for 15, or?
I will not take 20 minutes, that is for
Okay.
sure. Nobody
All right.
wants that, so. Good evening, everyone. My name is Arlene Tendick, and I'm going to be representing Adam Robinson with RPG and the rest of the Eddie Jones project team tonight. Before I started, I do want to just say thank you to Rob and Sergio for their professionalism and patience and objectivity during this process. I'm sure the members of the public and we can certainly agree on that. So just thank you both for your time and everything that you've put forward to this project. I don't want to be duplicative to Rob's presentation, so I'll touch on a couple things, and then members of the technical team are available for questions at the end. So often in these chambers, we hear members of the public demand for the respect of the general plan. Don't change it, leave it the same, respect the city's vision. This project does align with the general plan, specifically the economic development element. I've included some of the policy objectives here on the screen. It's a bit of an eye chart, so I won't expect you to read it. But these goals really do demonstrate what we're trying to accomplish with this project, and they'll serve as the structural framework of our presentation this evening. This site has been used for industrial purposes since the early 60s. And preserving that longtime legacy is really what we're trying to do. As this aerial image shows from the early 90s, the industrial uses actually predate the residential uses to the north. And as this time lapse shows, the community has really grown up around the city's industrial core. And that industrial zoning, as Rob shared, continues today. It's important to note that even if we wanted to change that zoning, we wouldn't be able to. There have been some of the comments from the public that I'm sure you've seen too that have suggested alternative uses for the site. As Rob suggested, we are going through the CLARA process. That process will result in a deed restriction for industrial uses in perpetuity. Like I said, even if we wanted to change it, we wouldn't be able to because of that soil contamination. The other important fact there is that cleanup effort will cost roughly $5 million. So that's a huge investment into this area that benefits the overall public good. We talked about proximity to the river, and it helps with that as well. The other constraint that we looked at is the adjacency to the airport. So we did have to design the project to be consistent with the general plan's objectives related to current airport operations and future as well. So the image on the top shows the height and transition areas within the airport land use plan, and the image on the bottom shows is an excerpt from the airport master plan that shows what could come to the land north of us. And lastly is proximity to the river. Rob already covered this, so I won't go into it as well. But satisfying this objective that's here, just to develop this highly constrained land, is really testament to the quality and the kind of work that RPG is known for. Working around these challenges was not easy. Which brings us to kind of our next big piece. RPG is a local North County investor and developer that's known for attracting the best tenants through its state-of-the-art facilities. The lack of a tenant has been a big sticking point for the public, understandably so. That fear of the unknown is scary, and our imaginations kind of fill in the blanks. So we wanted to take a minute just to use these couple examples. We chose these particular projects to highlight because they're real places that people can visit, and they share a similar building topology as Eddie Jones, as well as a similar proximity to existing residences. So this tenant makeup that's here on the screen, these are real RPG tenants in other projects. A group like Merck Pharmaceuticals is really on RPG's wish list for something like Eddie Jones. They would require the same kind of mix of office, manufacturing, warehouse uses that we're proposing with our project, as well as bringing a variety of good jobs. Not exactly going to be Merck, but you get the idea. This next one is here in San Marcos. This project is interesting because it demonstrates how the revitalization of underutilized land really does serve as that catalyst for future investment and just growth of the area. As Rob mentioned, these 31 acres are one of the largest remaining industrial parcels left in the city. Meeting this kind of need within the industrial space is becoming harder to do because the land just isn't available. So satisfying this objective for efficient redevelopment is really done to make sure that granting the CUP kind of ensures that we're able to maximize the land efficiently and that it doesn't go to waste. And the last example I have for you is La Pacifica Business Park right here in Oceanside. Of RPG's roughly 6 million square feet of industrial, about 1 million of that is right here in Oceanside. This is a great example because it was right across the street we had a recent meeting with the neighboring HOA, and their facility was right near La Pacifica. It was a great opportunity to highlight a real place. We encouraged them to go check it out on their way leaving. But it also triggered the idea to do a 24-hour trip survey of this 500,000 square feet of existing. And what that demonstrated was just really how consistent the information is when you take real life analysis and compare that to what we've shared with the community. Even at its height with 103 truck bays, even at its height, it was only 7 coming in and 4 coming out. So it's really not the hundreds that you're seeing today. It's easy to forget that a 200,000 square foot facility stood here previously. It's easy to omit that this area is already home to industrial uses. There are already trucks using Benet. There you go. It's easy to ignore that the existing land uses would allow for up to 1 million square feet of industrial here. This drive-by shows the existing condition of the property, and kind of you get a peekaboo of just how big 31 acres actually is. The river and the bike trail really do create a distinct separation between the residences to the north and the industrial core to the south. This project is respectful of both of those, though, through context-sensitive design. From the beginning, we've been committed to developing a project that enhances Oceanside's economy, respects its environment, and supports the local community. We've listened closely to feedback, engaged with residents and stakeholders, and taking meaningful steps to address the concerns, as evidenced by this 4-building option. It reduces the truck bays by 50%, eliminates all of the truck parking, and reduces the square footage of the building itself. It reconfigures the site from 1 mass structure to 4 smaller ones, and also increases the on-site landscaping. It takes a dilapidated, contaminated site and transforms it into a modern, efficient space consistent with the site's longtime zoning. We humbly ask that you take staff's recommendation to approve the Eddie Jones project tonight. Your vote preserves industrial land consistent with the city's economic goals, generates jobs and investment, improves infrastructure, and triggers extensive soil remediation for the environmental and public good. We recognize that large projects such as this bring questions and concerns. We remain committed to continuing to work with the city and the community to ensure this project's success in a way that aligns with Oceanside's values. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and we look forward to your questions.
Commissioner Rosales, did you want to ask about a traffic issue? Maybe this is the time to bring that up, bring the traffic person up.
Well, my traffic question seemed like it was tied more to city policy on how they come up with the number, so maybe it's for the traffic engineer as opposed to the applicant's representative. But I can wait until we get a little bit further.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Malik.
I had a question on the Clara and the, excuse me. I had a question on the Clara and hazmat remediation, and you've identified the cost of that at $5 million, but in terms of the overall timeline for construction for the project and how much of that is the remediation? Is it an on-site remediation, bioremediation? Is it a removal of product so that it literally leaves the area, and ballpark timelines for things like that? Just trying to understand the overall general impact of this and the construction timeline. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. Dan Nebaum, the Lightfoot Planning Group. I'll try to field that from a planning perspective, but it's roughly an additional 2 months of the grading that's in there. Additional study, of course, is going on with the DTSC, and that would be approved, but in general, to handle that portion of the site, it'd be approximately 2 more months.
And the overall time for what's your construction timeline? Is it?
The overall construction timeline, I believe, is 12 full months. Yeah.
So you're going to build all 4 buildings at once?
Yeah, that's the phase.
Yes.
I do have one additional question on that, and I guess it goes to, while there are no identified tenants now, if the project's approved and it moves forward, well, do you have anybody that potentially is interested at this time that, not necessarily being able to name names because of NDAs, but are there any interested potential tenants?
None that we would talk about here, and frankly, that really doesn't happen until the construction starts to happen. The business Adam's been in for a long time. Until the building's going up, it's hard to get a lease signed somewhat. Clearly, there's an expectation that a tenant would have a space to move into, and that happens typically when construction starts.
Commissioner Balmer.
I have a question. Like on one of the slides, it showed, in your presentation, showed the houses, the river, and then the bike trail, and then the project itself. About how far from the houses to the actual, like, say, truck bays are?
To the first truck bays?
Yeah.
It was, what was it, Arlene?
800 feet?
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to check.
Pretty far. Like, I know you showed a couple other projects that you have built that showed the project next to houses, but it was pretty much just right across like a freeway, I think that was, which was not even 800 feet. It probably was a lot less than that,
There's a
right?
couple of the projects that are very close to
Right.
existing homes, but there's a buffer and there's walls and
Right.
operational characteristics. This is probably one of the larger buffers you'd have compared to several of those situations where you don't have a full industrial park that you're in the middle
Right.
of. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Dan, we were at the site this morning, and we were in the houses closest to the development, and we were there 7:30 to 8:30 or so, and you can hear it's a steady hum from the 76, and then the airplane's taking off and landing, you can hear the engines. And my question is and it really goes back to the facilities management plan. Because the noise is I think, going to travel. And what happens if a truck is backing up, into a space at 2 in the morning? Is the facilities management plan going to deal with that? Because I think that would be a problem.
Yeah, the facility management plan would be intended to deal with that. It's a condition the city's applied to that. There's a good neighbor policy that's in that plan that's required to deal with truck trips, with noise, with backing up noise. That can all be part of that plan. And that policy requires, there be a designated point person with the project that the city and the neighborhood can go to deal with that. But, specifically if there was a truck at 2 a.m. backing up, yeah, the ambient noise is a bit lower, right? But that can be part of that plan on, how long can that backing up be?
Is that plan, does it say there's a person in the neighborhood with a person with the developer? how does it, it sounds nice, but is it for real? If I have a legitimate complaint, I want to make sure that,
Yeah, and that would happen by going through the city. The planning department would be the ones that kind of regulate and administer that plan. The project's required to have a point person. I don't know whether the neighborhood would designate somebody. Typically, those kind of complaints would come individually or come from an HOA in the neighborhood. I don't know if planning wants to comment on that, but.
Yes. Chair Morrissey, just to be clear on the way it's conditioned, the facility management plan, the first thing listed is to have a property management and contact information listed. So if there were any complaints regarding the property by a neighbor could have, that information can be provided to that neighbor so they can contact the property directly.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Dan? Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay. Mary Sue,
Chair Morrissey.
how many speakers do we have?
We have 33 individuals and 3 10-minute group speakers. Would you like to discuss?
Sure. So
amongst
typically,
yourselves.
when we have that many speakers, we're going to limit discussions to 2 minutes. And let's cue it up.
Okay, thank you very much. Please come forward in the order your name appears on the screen. State your name clearly for the chamber record as well as the gallery. You will have 2 minutes. Hang on, I'm trying to get this thing to work. Here we go. We have 2 lecterns. Please feel free to pre-stage at the second lectern while you await your turn. And quick reminder for group speakers will be heard after the individual speakers are done. And the request to speak forms were left at the back of the chamber with instructions for the group speakers. So I think we're understood. Now, also, forgive me in advance if I mispronounce your name. Okay.
Mary Sue?
Yes.
I would just, if you all could please occupy both of those so that we can make sure that this flows. We've got about 90 minutes to 2 hours of presentations from you. We want to hear everything that you have to say, but if everybody preloads in front of their lectern prior to, it really helps things move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. As you can see, first up we have Dee Keck, followed by Neil Hancock, then John Bucalo, and Richard Wells.
Good evening, council members, city representatives, developer and staff. 30 months of hard work is what brings many of our blue crew.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Dee Keck,
Thank you.
resident of Oceanside. Blue Crew, grassroots group known as OSO, Oceanside Speaks Out. This is what has brought us before you tonight. Very few of the people who have signed these petitions, which represents 5,458 signatures by people throughout the community. Yes, some of these people signed it, but you can see that we are not represented by 5,458 people. The EIR has been approved, has been filed with endless hedge words. By definition, a hedge word is a phrase used to allow for additional possibilities or to avoid commitment. For example, in the EIR, endlessly, we saw often, usually, sometimes, might, possibly, and maybe even more than that. But those are hedge words that are littered literally throughout, sprinkled literally throughout that DEIR. So maybe we won't be impacted by this increased traffic, air and noise pollution, fire evacuation, and other negative impacts. We are here, though, to ask that you base your voice and your vote tonight on absolute. I have 3 absolutes for you to consider.
Thank you. Could John
Thank you.
John's on deck. Neil, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Neil Hancock. I live in the area. If you haven't figured it out, there's 114 signs out here. That's all they passed out. That's what they keep showing you. the theme of the night is to just say no. I may have it wrong, but I'm asking that you reject the certification of the EIR because the EIR was written to develop and make 114 doors. No matter what they come in and say, that thing, if you certify it, you're certifying 114. That's the way I understand it. I may be wrong. One of the questions that came up tonight was, we got 20-foot walls on the ends? What do we have 20-foot walls for? I can understand with the planes falling out of the air around that area, but why do we have 20-foot walls? If we could, we'd like to ask that you make a no-build recommendation, send the developer back and reconfigure using existing laws, which will put 18 trucks on that property because of the 3 parcels, and you get 6 trucks per parcel. So you got 18 trucks maximum. You don't need to do a CUP. You could say no to the CUP. The transportation money is a joke. Not only is it a drop in the bucket, but it could, like you said already, it could be used anywhere in the city. It could be over at Melrose and 76 or something. If we do build it, I think we need to do a designated right turn lane coming off of Benet going on to 76. Thank you.
Neil. John?
Good evening. Thank you for your service. I spoke to you a couple weeks ago about the beauty of Oceanside and what a great community it is. I also spoke to you about what people talk about in Oceanside when they think of that. They talk about South Oceanside and Oceanside west of the freeway and how the quality of life and the value of the homes are reminiscent to that of Carlsbad, another coastal community. But then when you come inland a little bit to where we are, things seem to change. When I came to the Buena Vista Lagoon meeting a couple weeks ago, Mr. Rosales had asked questions that were good questions about the fencing. How will those fences affect the homeowners that are nearby? What will they see? What will it block the noise? Well, there's no fence on this planet that's going to block these monsters from our house. Okay? When you drive into South O, it should be no different than when you drive into North O. When you drive from North O on 76 to our community, that should also be no different. We have one opportunity here to hit a home run that we're going to look at for the next 30 years. Though this project benefits some people with quite a bit of money, it robs the people in this community of the quality of life. As far as the good neighbor policy goes, we don't know if this is going to be a 24-hour facility. If it is 24-hour, they will be backing up at 2 a.m., and that's a bad neighbor. And you will hear those alarms, and neither Cal OSHA nor your insurance company is going to let you quiet those down or get rid of them. We also have no guarantee that these trucks, who's going to stop them from going north on Alex Road or north on Bennett? Is there going to be a cop? My stepfather was a truck driver, and a truck driver is like a refrigerator. When the door shuts, the light goes off. So if MapQuest says make a left or a right on Fusat, he's making a right, and then he's going to come through our neighborhood where children are on bikes, and they're going to come all the way around to this project. I've seen what this builder builds. They're beautiful, but this can't be the best we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Richard Wells. I live in Townsite, and my primary concern is traffic. Most of the discussion this evening has been about traffic on Benet, but in fact, the environmental impact report acknowledges that the traffic on Route 76 at Fusat is already at a level of service E, which means is operating at capacity and has an unstable flow. So the idea that the impact of these trucks on Route 76 can be addressed by widening and lengthening right turn lanes is ludicrous on its face. So I strongly urge you to vote no on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Michael Modello. I live in the northernmost cul-de-sac in the airport community that abuts Camp Pendleton. First, before I kind of go into the nitty-gritty, because I've only got a little bit of time here, I do want to say I agree with the previous speaker that we don't need a CUP. So I think in some of these meetings that we've had with the developer, it's been said over and over again, well, you know, something's going to be developed. I know you guys don't want anything to be developed, but that's not realistic. There's literally not one person who I've spoken to over the last 2.5 years who thinks that nothing's going to be developed. We understand it's a light industrial area. We understand that that is going to be developed as such. However, there's a big difference between 172 or 173,000 square foot building versus a building that's the size of 4 Costco's and the truck bays that are associated with even the reduced imprint, the reduced plan. So really, I think what's happening is you're just putting lipstick on a pig to be, I mean, that's not very nice, but I kind of think that's what's happening here. Another thing I wanted to bring up, just because it hasn't been brought up before tonight, is not just the traffic and pollution, but the public safety element. We saw what happens in Maui. We saw what happens in Los Angeles when we have fires and we can't evacuate quickly. The general plan says that for non-rural areas, which our cul-de-sac is, it was on fire 3 years ago, we need to be able to evacuate within 5 minutes. Right now, from my house on that northern cul-de-sac, is over 7 minutes for the fire station to come. So you add even 56 trucks, the 540 employees that are going out Fusat, all the trucks that are going out Benet, those are the only 2 means of egress and ingress into our neighborhood. And I fear what happens if there's a fire that we can't all get out, because right now we can't even do it for what's legally in the general plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Reverend Charles, if you'll excuse me one moment, I've been asked to announce some of the names because the lobby is not able to see, so I'm just going to say that a couple names real quick, Reverend. We won't time you, hold on. So after Reverend Charles, we're going to have Mark McFarland, and after Mark, we'll have Wendy Bravo Dolan, and then after Wendy, we will have Ken McCallick. Sorry, Reverend Charles, go ahead.
My name is Father Charles Wright of the Order of St. Benedict. I live at Prince of Peace Abbey and have done so for the past 64 years. The monastery was founded at that site in 1958. We, in fact, named the road Bennett Road. Bennett is the Old English term for Benedict. The religious order that I belong to was founded by St. Benedict, who was born in the year 480. I came to Oceanside before the harbor was open, long before I-5, and when 76 was only between Airport Road and Coast Highway, a footpath. In fact, the very site that is being considered here tonight was empty when Alex Deutsch would come up and discuss with us his plan for a factory that wouldn't make any noise, because we know that any noise down in the because of the topography is amplified. We can hear sometimes people in conversation. Monasteries were first founded to be places of prayer, but they were also communities that preserved and fostered Western culture and civilization. They were famous for copying rare manuscripts, centers of art, science, architecture, and medicine, and even music. Monks were the first ones to write that down. All these required an ambience of peace, thought, and reasonable amount of silence. And as a byproduct, they even worked with charitable organizations. Our most famous monk was Brother Benno. Our library contains over 45,000 volumes and is open to the public. The retreat house that we have for overnight and long-term guests seeking quiet is approximately 25,000
Reverend, can
individuals
you-
a year, and daytime visitors over 25,000 a year. So we recommended that the project is denied.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark McFarland. I live just up the hill from the proposed project, and we have our two roads, in and out of the whole area. My question is why are we having all this ambiguity in the condition? Why is there nothing being specified out as a condition of approval at this point in time when they're obfuscating who the tenant's going to be? So they're obfuscating who the tenant's going to be. They're not saying that they're going to limit the hours of operation. They're not saying, as part of the conditions that are going down for approval right now, that it's not going to be 140 truck days. Why can't they be honest with us? All that stuff's on the table. There's nothing saying that any of that other stuff will get restricted upon the approval of your good neighbor, whatever that is. In a time when it seems like public servants are favoring the rich over your constituents, I implore you to be the exception, not the rule. That's all I've.
Thank you.
Can I have the camera, please?
Pardon me?
Camera? You have the camera? So this is where we're talking
Can
about.
you identify yourself, please?
Pardon me?
Can you tell us your name, please?
Yes, this is what we're talking about here. My name's Wendy Bravo.
Thank you.
And I'm an oblate at the Prince of Peace Abbey and have been for a few years. We're extensions of the monastery insofar as our station in life allows. And I'm here today to protest mightily against this project or the negative effect that it's going to have on our community. I urge you to reject it. I'm one of the many who come to the Prince of Peace Abbey Church to pray and to replenish our souls in the peace and quiet and natural splendor of Almighty God. She's the Queen and she's the Mother of God. This is important to know because the meaning of silence for us is very, very serious. And we can look at the Deutsch as and the other business, the connectivity business, as having established, once they were gone, a peaceful environment. In reverse, we'll say. Please keep it. Please keep it, I beseech you. And one last thing I have to say. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord God of hosts. How lovely. Please keep it for our children.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Ken McCallick. I live at 3425 Spindrift Court. That's in the Mar-a-Lago Park neighborhood behind this project. I'd like to voice my opposition to the project. The area affected was zoned decades ago, and the neighborhood was adjacent, was not as dense, 60 years ago, actually. The original zoning was for 18 large trucks. This project is asking for an exception to that zoning to increase the number of trucks by 3 times to 56. So it's not adhering to the original plan for the area. The neighborhood surrounding it has grown almost double, maybe triple, from the zoning was done 60 years ago. Now, I've lived here 20 years. I'm a proud resident, and I love this neighborhood. And the current plan uses a lot of hypotheticals and conjectures to estimate traffic and other effects of the project. Since we have no idea who the actual tenants will be, we can't really know what the effects of traffic or noise will be, or pollution or safety. How can we determine any real economic or social value to this project without knowing who the tenants are going to be? We don't even know the kind of tenants. Yeah, maybe we get murked, maybe we won't. A large, noisy, dirty, traffic-blocking truck depot is incongruous with our beautiful neighborhood, the idyllic monastery. and the pristine wilderness that's adjacent to this project. We will already be affected by the traffic from the wave park at Fusat. The stats in the EIR are not convincing to me that if there's going to be an emergency in the area. I'm not convinced that we'll be able to get out. I don't believe them. The only party who will benefit from this project is the developer. Please remember that you represent us, the everyday folks who live in the neighborhood here in Oceanside. We simply want to live in peace and preserve the quality of life and beauty of our neighborhood.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Edwin Jenkins. As residents of the City of Oceanside, we view you, our Planning Commission, as the gatekeepers of the vision of Oceanside's future. Just because a proposed development has checked all the required boxes with the Planning Department does not mean that the proposed development should be summarily approved. The most significant question that must be asked and answered is if a particular proposed development serves the best interest of the City of Oceanside and its residents. The proposed Eddie Jones warehouse project fails on so many levels to fulfill this requirement. The developer's EIR puts forth dubious conclusions that the negative effects of their project are, quote, less than significant, unquote. This is ludicrous. Even the most casual observer can see that the negative effects of the proposed project are quite significant, pervasive, and severe. If a truly honest EIR were written, it would necessarily arrive at the obvious conclusion that this project should not be built as currently proposed. Because of the many significant adverse effects the project would impose on the City of Oceanside, on its residents, and especially on both the nearby residential and commercial communities. We're not against this development, but we are not against development on this site, but we are against the project as it is currently proposed. In fact, we look forward to appropriate and compatible development on this site in the future, which would truly be positive for the City of Oceanside and its residents. I ask you to vote against approving this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Gretchen, I'm just going to read a couple more names before you start for our lobby folks. For those out in the lobby, after Gretchen will be, I believe, Josen Kessler, then Jameson Bucalo, and then Larry Knight. Thank you, Gretchen.
Great. Hello, good evening. My name is Gretchen Gary. Thank you for the time to share my perspective and input on the Eddie Jones project. I've been here to speak on this before and have sent quite a few emails, all of which have been confirmed and included with the material. I'm sure some of you have read those. I live in the Wannisview community at the end of the Tishmal cul-de-sac with panoramic views of the project. And just to a comment about it being already zoned light industrial, yes, it's light industrial, not mega industrial. This is a mega industrial distribution complex less than 800 feet from my backyard where my children, one of which who's here and will speak shortly, spend most of their time. And about the same distance from the Prince Skate Park where hundreds of other children engage in rigorous physical activity day and night. I was here 2 weeks ago and spoke about the risk of air pollution from ozone, nitrogen oxide, and particulate matter emitted from the exhaust of diesel engines and the health risks these chemicals pose to children. I also spoke about noise pollution and related risk of mental health disorders, disease, and productivity impact. The EPA, Environmental Defense Fund, and American Health Association have all confirmed that there is proven risk to human health related to distribution centers such as the one that is proposed with the staggering 56 truck bays. I reviewed the final EER and saw that my name was included, but I don't believe it addressed any of my concerns. I was not impressed with the developer's tactic at first presenting an outrageous design for 114 truck bays and then saying they addressed our concerns with a 50% reduction to 56 truck bays. That was not a negotiation. That was psychological manipulation that made it look like they were making compromises to meet our desire. Given the shift towards residential and recreational land uses in this area, I would argue that any development should be forced to comply with the existing zoning. Thank you. Please reject.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Johan Kressler. Others have mentioned it, kind of unclear who's going to be the tenant, but I don't really think that matters a whole lot who's going to be the tenant, because it's going to be a business, and if it's a good business, they're going to maximize their investment. They're going to pay a lot of money for it to be there. So they're going to maximize their truck base. That means they're going to try to get in as many trucks as fast as they can, process as many trucks as fast as they can, and then get them out as fast as they can. And I have serious doubts that anybody who doesn't do that will be there for long, because it's going to go out of business. And if you think about that, it's kind of hard to see how any limits, if they make any sense to begin with, which I doubt, would be enforced. Who's going to count the trucks? Who's going to count how many trucks are going to be on there? Who's going to count how many coming in or coming out? And again, if I'm a business paying millions and millions of dollars and try to compete with others, they're going to try to do what's best for them. And to some extent, I mean, that's what they're supposed to do. So they're going to try to maximize their investment. That means as many trucks as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Jameson Bucalo, and I live in a house across the street from the Eddie Jones land. I love playing outside and riding my bike with friends, but I'm really worried about the new warehouse distribution center that might be built in our neighborhood. If you approve of this project, big trucks would come and go from the warehouse all the time. They make a lot of pollution and nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, which can make the air we breathe really dirty. When the air gets polluted, it can make it harder for kids like me to play outside without getting sick. Some studies have shown that kids who live near places with lots of truck and traffic can have more asthma attacks and other health problems. I don't want this to happen to me or my friends, and I don't want my sister who likes to play basketball and soccer to have to stay inside because the air isn't safe to breathe. I also heard that it can increase noise pollution, which can be really loud and annoying, especially when we're trying to sleep or do our homework. Please think about the health and happiness of all the kids and families who live here. We want to grow up in a safe and clean environment. I hope you can say no to the warehouse distribution center and help our neighborhood be a great place to live. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jameson. Very good job.
Good evening. My name is Larry Knight. Never follow a child or animals.
Hard act to follow,
I'm
isn't
going to
it?
speak from the heart a little bit. I don't know how many of you were on the commission when the Amazon project was being developed. I was one of the neighborhood people that came down and talked to City Hall, and we won. And it gave me hope for these people, because I think all the work and all the preps and all of the legal things that took place, and they were, you know, they did their homework. When it comes down to it, it's us. It's where we live. And I implore you to listen to every person in this room. And please vote no.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. We are Susan and Anthony Mora. We reside on Tupel Drive, which is situated immediately across the river from this project site. We previously submitted our objections to this project in writing to the Commission regarding traffic impacts and noise and light pollution. In the interest of time, we'll focus on traffic concerns. We appreciate the second version of the plan that drops the truck bays to 56. But half of a ridiculously large number can still be a ridiculously large number. Whether it's 114 or 56, it's way too many trucks for a small two-lane access road. This will severely impact the residents north of the river, as well as everyone who travels the 76. We previously lived in Riverside and saw firsthand the crowding and slowing to a standstill on the 15 and 60 freeways as a result of increasing truck traffic due to the warehouse proliferation there. Let that be a cautionary tale for Oceanside. Let's not create the same mess here and negatively impact the quality of life of our residents and our tourism industry. We oppose this project and urge you to deny the proposal and any requested conditional use permits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary, if you'll excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm going to read a couple more names. My apologies, everyone. Next up, for those in the lobby, will be Michael KOCT, Salvador Obrica, and Anna Floyd. Thank you, Mary. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mary Hansen. I'm a resident here in Oceanside near the project. And my first and foremost concern is the safety of our residents in the area, which I am one of them. If there were an emergency and somebody had brought up, the fire with the Pacific Palisades and Maui and the Eaton fire, we just have 2 roads going in and out. And we had a fire 3 years ago, very scary. I was home. I can see just bad things happening. Our insurance has been dropped because we're in the area of that. So things just doesn't make sense and add up to me. With the 114 semi-trucks going to 56, we still have the cars that the employees are going to have too. So with the 2 access roads, and we're going to have the ocean camp, and from what I understood, there was going to be a turnaround. That's going to slow us down even just getting out on that side. My other big thing is our city's vision. It's way too close to the wave park, the skate park, the river, the ocean. It's going to cause backups on the 76 and the 5. The environment is going to be you've heard a lot of it already. So to me, it just doesn't make sense with this project. And I just hope that you deny it. And I guess that's all I can say. I'm emotional.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Michael KOCT. I live on Fern Ridge Court. I'm so nervous I almost forgot where I lived. I'm sorry. I appreciate you coming and looking at the site. I was there also at 2:30 this afternoon. I don't have time to get to all my points, but if you walked from the project site to as close to 76 as you can get, and stopped and looked at the intersection of Benet and Airport Road, you'll see what I saw. Cars, there are already tractor trailers utilizing Airport Road. One was making a right-hand turn onto Airport Road, and there was a CAT construction vehicle like trying to turn left simultaneously. It's just like the world's most ridiculous site to put such a large development in proximity to all of the homes. I'm sorry. And it makes no sense. I respect everyone here, but Rob's statement that this is a low-intensity project, and which simultaneously requires lessening the potentially significant impacts. I mean, all of it is contradictory. When I walked down to the site back from Airport Road, the bike path was significantly impacted already by the small tractors and the small trucks that are on the road. One little edge over the white line, the tractor trailer is impacting with cars. Finally, as far as the evacuations go, I think the model should be guided more like by the recent fires in LA than these hypotheticals, which did not include many of the HOAs.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members, Oceanside Planning Commission. My name is Salvador Obrica, Political Coordinator for Teamsters Local Union Number 542. Local 542 represents over 6,000 workers in San Diego County, including in Oceanside. As both community residents and workers in the logistics industry, Teamsters wants businesses to be both good employers and good neighbors. We do not feel that this project, including the 4-building option, is in the best interest of Oceanside. We urge the Planning Commission to reject the project, including certification of the final environmental impact report, the proposed conditional use permit, and any other necessary project approvals. One reason Local 542 has participated in the deliberation over this project is it is concerned that it could be an Amazon facility. We believe that Amazon facilities are bad for both workers and the community they are located in. Jobs at such facilities are known for subpar wages and high injury and turnover rates. These facilities also generate particular acute impacts on traffic, parking, and the environment. The developer says it's highly unlikely that space like this will be for Amazon, as Amazon is scaling back. The truth of the matter is that they continue to build locations according to this size across the country. Also, as it was mentioned previously, Amazon tried to build here before, and it was beaten back by the community and labor standing together. So we ask and encourage you to vote no and reject this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anna Floyd, and I'm a resident most impacted by this project. I live in the Juanes View Estates, and I am deeply troubled by the potential impact of this project on my family's quality of life, as well as the broader Oceanside community. As a mother of 2 children, my daily routine involves taking them to school and extracurricular activity. One of my biggest challenges is driving 2 miles, which takes 25 minutes due to delays on Highway 76 and Mission Road. At peak times with trucks added to the mix, especially in the morning and after school, this situation is just going to worsen. My home is within 1,500 feet of this warehouse. My children's bedrooms face directly to Bennett, and we are at a stop sign. I find it difficult to understand how a project like this, where a truck will accelerate at 45 miles an hour next to my home, will not impact my quality of life. The city has indicated that trucks will be allowed on Bennett Road. This is a public road. I do not see any things prohibiting this project at this time. So I also want to bring back my other concern of construction noise. The development of something 3 football fields within 1,500 feet of my home will not be reasonable. The air pollution from diesel emissions will have health impacts on the families living in this community, as well as kids enjoying the skate park. Studies have shown air pollution contributes to asthma and other health problems. Lastly, I have concerns about fire safety and evacuations. As we saw in the Malibu fires, I do not support this project or the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'll excuse me, Eric, I'm going to read a couple more names. I'm so sorry. For the lobby. Following Eric Starkle will be Jeannie Pham, Jimmy Knott, and then Jim Cordenbrock. Thank you, Eric. You may continue.
Thank you, Planning Commissioners. I'm here. My name is Eric Stark. I'm here in support of the project. I've heard a lot of the comments tonight. I think there's a lot of concern that this is going to be another Amazon. I don't see that development as the same. I think, industrial development's changed quite a bit. It's not all smokestacks and truck terminals. What's been proposed here is a highly versatile development that can be utilized for all the different business types that Oceanside seeks to acquire. Their life sciences, their defense, their R&D, their med tech. And what that does is it creates jobs. And jobs are the engine. Jobs are what support home prices. They support the local retailers. It's also reverse commute. But I think jobs is a huge thing. And you've got a Class A development here that is designed with a lot of glass line potential for R&D and life science tenants like Genentech and Roche that are up there already. If you look at some of the most successful tenants that are up in Ocean Ranch, you have the Genentech campus, which is probably your highest paid employees in Oceanside. So you're attracting the best and the brightest from the universities and potentially bringing highly skilled labor into the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Jeannie Pham. Is Jeannie Pham available? Okay, I think I'm going to mark Jeannie as spoken. Jimmy, if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, Chairman, Commissioners, Jimmy Knott, 127 Cherry Lane. As to potential economic benefit for Oceanside, let's look at the modern distribution center, whether it's going to be built in the temporary or reformed in the near future. Most of them are robotic, mechanized, automatic loading and unloading distribution centers. In this proposal, you have manufacturing. The tenant is yet to be described. In that type of situation, it's highly questionable. Could it be chemically, involved, biological, nuclear? Also, any type of vehicles that are involved could be involved with lithium, as a goal of the state of California by 2030 to have all the major trucks to be powered by lithium. We saw over the past few months here, especially like at the Trump Casino in Las Vegas, one small truck, lithium powered, blocked their front door, burning, and it took hours to control it. There are other issues involved in this. The flood wall, we have the 1916 flood. There was not addressed into the EIR. There are other issues into the EIR that were no dialogue. Like in my letter, 48 points. It was a one-way dialogue. And you have like the issues as it goes to waste when the presenters. What you have is the issue is they said that for the public good.
Thank you, Jimmy.
What is it?
My name is Jim Cordenbrock, and thank you for the opportunity. I live on Tupelo. I've lived there for 6 years, about 25 years in Southern California. I'm a veteran. I'm a current business owner. This project could be great, or it couldn't be. I don't know how, though, there's 2 points I want to make. I don't understand how we could possibly vote on something, number one, that we don't know enough about. It's so ambiguous. I don't know how conscionably we could vote on something like this without knowing all these facts, right? That's number one. Number two, it's common sense, right? There's 2 access points in and out of there. In the morning, if you get behind just a tow truck, 2 tow trucks, it's unbelievable how it will prevent and impede the traffic, right? So common sense, right? So, yeah, so I would honestly urge you to stick to the 6 original, what it was supposed to be, number one. And number two, I think if we can just use our heads on this one before we make a decision of this magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Braithwaite, and I live on Tupelo Drive, which is I'm very near to this site. Please hear my voice and hear all of these voices today. I've read the environmental impact statement, and I believe that it grossly underestimates the harmful noise and traffic and air pollution effects that will result from that project. Did you notice that when the applicant made their presentation, they didn't mention anything about the human beings in this area? Perhaps they should pay a little bit of attention to the effect of their project on the people who live nearby. And the environmental impact study also did not address the negative synergy that exists or may exist with the Ocean Camp project off of Fawcett. So meaningful mitigation measures are not provided to residents. Please reject this project in its entirety. Thank you.
Chris Weinold. I am a local Oceanside homeowner, resident, and business owner. I'm wondering, I've got a question actually for the gentleman who spoke a couple times before me. If you're an Oceanside resident, you're speaking in favor
Sir,
of this
could you
project.
speak a little bit closer to them?
The gentleman who spoke a couple times before me, I was wondering, and he was speaking in favor of this project, I was wondering if he's an Oceanside resident and lives in the affected area. I'm assuming he is not. And I am. And my question here also is, it seems we're getting the cart before the horse. We already have a well plan, and I got to commend them on a polished presentation here. If I were to ever need a marketing presentation, perhaps I'd go speak to these folks. But what we're not doing is asking the residents of Oceanside what might be in their best interest here. And I doubt that Oceanside needs the money to the extent where they're going to put in something that the local residents are very much opposed to. And it sounds to me like with the pollution concerns, there may be litigation as well. And I know this is an intelligent staff, and I'd like to know, why you're not asking the local residents for that. They came up with 5,000 signatures on our petition. That was all by volunteers. And the city hasn't done anything to ask the local residents what we could do with it. There are better uses for that property. I'm assuming Oceanside is still going to grow in the future. And 20 years from now, they're going to look for properties to put school buses and maintenance yards and things of the sort. You're going to be looking for properties at that time. Why don't you do something along those lines, something that's more in line with what the community could use? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Keller. I'm a 45-year resident of Oceanside and a homeowner, and I'm here to speak in support of your approval of the project and the issuance of the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daphne Silver. I'm also an Oceanside resident, and I strongly support this project. I believe this project would be a great addition to our community because it would add valuable jobs for not only construction, but the tenants that we bring in afterwards. I've seen a lot of other RPG developments, and they bring beautiful, high-quality development projects to the community. They also bring high-quality tenants. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have Tyler Stemley, followed by Oscar Matos, followed by Nash Johnson.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Oscar Matos. I originally came up here because I wanted to talk about the 400 children that I oversee that are going to be on the path of these trucks. I oversee 3 child care centers here in Oceanside. All 3 of these are going to be impacted. The children that we serve are between 1 and 3 years. They are going to be breathing these exhaust fumes nonstop, 140 per day, and that's at best case scenario. If we look at the number of loading docks that they have the ability to put 80 trucks an hour on the road. That's the ability that they have. The gentleman that came up here and talked about bringing high quality scientific jobs, these buildings are not designed for scientific manufacturing. I know, I'm a project manager, Thermo Fisher, I work for Sanofi. These are not designed for those types. There's not enough manufacturing space. There's way too many loading. There's a reason why this developer is not stating who their tenants are. There's a reason why organizations have had to reach out to them to have them take their names out of their proposals. I've personally had to do that. Reach out to them and say, take my organization's name out of your proposal. I've never spoken to them, never contacted them, never had any type of contact asking you to provide for the organization that I represent. I have changed my scope of work now, and now I work with children. I no longer am a project manager. But please take a look at the impact this will do to our community. And as far as bringing high quality people with higher education, with income, that's what we're doing now. Oceanside's an amazing city. I'm an engineer. My wife's a scientist. We moved to Oceanside because we love this city the way it is. We don't need 140 trucks a day here.
Next up, we're going to have Nash Johnson, followed by Jack King, followed by Stacy Jackson, followed by Drew Dodds. Then you can go. Are you Jack?
I'm Jack.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Jack King. I live in Oceanside. I walk the neighborhoods, and these are really nice neighborhoods. I live on Compass, which is above Mission Avenue, and I look down on all of this. So, but I had friends who worked at Deutsch, and Deutsch did not have 56 truck bays. This seems to me like a grift, because we don't know who they're building this for. So how are we going to vote on something like this? Let's find out who they're building this for, because it's not. They bring up Merck. Merck doesn't have 56 bay doors. I mean, if we want scientific things to like this kind of like light industrials, whatever they're discussing, then let's find out who they're building this for before we vote on it. Please vote no. Thank you.
Mary Sue, after the speaker, I think we'll take a 10-minute break.
Thank you. Noted.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Jackson. I live in the airport community just right next to the proposed warehouse development. I moved here in 2020. When I moved here, it was a dilapidated, small warehouse. I knew what I bargained for when I purchased my property. But the thing that people aren't talking about and calling this project what it is, this project is a monstrosity in the alleged name of economic development. It is outside the purview of what people bargain for when they purchase their houses. It is alleged economic development outside of what the community looks like. A 20-foot wall alone is outside of the look and feel of the neighborhood, even when you consider the skate park and the airport and other industrial areas adjacent to that property. I think that this monstrosity in the alleged name of economic development is on the backs of the people in this room, our quality of life, our egress out of the community when there is a catastrophe, and people's property values along that strip, exactly looking right into that warehouse. I think that is not something that any of us bargained for. Thank you. Please vote no.
Thank you. So, Drew, why don't you go ahead and speak, and then after that, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Perfect. My name's Drew Dodds. I work here locally in the area. I'm going to talk about two things, jobs and commute. One thing I want to press on with this facility is, with the spec facility, it's difficult to know what tenant. And I'm going to read off some of the major tenants in the area. Gilead Sciences, Genentech, Titleist, Nidodinco, Magnaflow, Cat. San Diego area has a very diverse demand, as many of us know. We're one of the largest defense contractors, manufacturing hubs in the nation, one of the largest life science hubs. And we have in this area a lot of golf companies, action sports. What this development will bring is high-skilled technical jobs, engineering, lab support. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on is commute. So I think everybody enjoys a community where they're able to work locally, make a good living, have a reduced commute time. So allowing community members to work here locally with strong paying jobs, not have to commute out of market, whether that's down to central San Diego, east, that reduces traffic, that reduces everybody's well-being. And I think that, talking about this development specifically, RPG has done a great job, as they've shown in other markets, Carlsbad, Vista, North County, doing very high-end industrial developments that attract these high-quality corporate jobs and corporate tenants.
Thank you. Okay, so it's about 8 o'clock now. Let's take a break and we'll be back at 8:10. This meeting will come to order. Mary Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple things. We wrapped up the individual speakers, so if there's any other individuals that would like to speak before we go into the group speakers, you can come forward at this time, but do be sure to state your name clearly for the record in the gallery, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
You started it already? Pardon? Okay. The realist creed.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Sorry?
Could you tell us your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Brandon Ebling.
Thank you.
Commission. Again, the realist creed. Think tragically to avoid tragedy. Just real quickly, my relevant bio information. In my youth, I did farming and construction, military, 2 tours in Vietnam, Yankee Station, fighter squadron, flight ops, crew chief, flight deck, and which has been characterized as the most dangerous 4.5 acres on Earth. As a forester, degreed forester from HSU, College of Forestry. Summer jobs included CDF, firefighting one season, and internship at Jackson State Forest the next. Post-degree employment, forest a consultancy firm, a land management firm where I did surveying and writing EIS and EIRs. And I managed 30,000 acres of timberland in Northern California redwoods. Much of my career, as you can tell, has been engaged in high hazard conditions. And that also includes hazardous waste, 3 consulting and contracting firms in waste management mitigation and cleanup, environmental mitigation, including geohydrology, groundwater cleanup, asbestos, and et cetera. What are the implications of this intermodal operation? Ingress, egress, and emergency evacuation. In the event of a fire, instantly sparking a catastrophic conflagration, first consuming the dense, dry riverbed vegetation in an explosive wake of an unstoppable firestorm, consuming everything in its hellish path, cutting off the only ingress, egress, i.e. Benet and Foussat bridges, evacuation choke points that this ill-conceived Eddie Jones project will make exponentially worse as the firestorm levels entire communities along the SLR WI, this wildland urban interface, which we're in, devastating property, destroying countless families left homeless or worse, dead in the rubble, alongside pets and their service animals. And by the way, I'm a service-disabled veteran. I didn't put that in there, but and what are those who survive? Schools burned to the ground, our leaders of the future. Deprived again of years of essential education, a lost generation.
Sir, you've gone over time.
Yeah, but I was cut off for about 20 seconds. Can I please finish? I'll be done in a moment.
You can wrap it up now.
Public safety services, hospital, police, government services, mom and pop businesses, the lifeblood of the community, the potential for lost, all gone, think Los Angeles, and I'll finish up with this. Other related risks, new commercial facilities slated for Foussat choke point, endangered species. The Benet Bridge has a unique curve in its structure.
Thank you, sir.
And architectural design required to avoid impacting the Lis Belferio. Noise element, diesel trucks operating 24/7 adjacent to all these homes, average daily traffic, double pane windows and doors I installed to mitigate this, noise impacts from SR 76, the airport operation, but those improvements are only partially effective. They don't mitigate the noise pollution disturbing the enjoyment of our backyard. And air quality, thousands of diesel trucks weekly. Local, and this is
Sergio,
it. Local
when you have a
prevailing wind
situation
drift.
like this, what do we do?
What is it in terms of impacts for our community? Diesel soot, adjacent to similar
Sir,
shipping
Sergeant of Arms.
services, enterprises. The media has reported homes in the entire Los Angeles
Sir, you're
area
taking
blackened
up
by
other
soot by
people's
these
time. We've
facilities.
given you plenty, about 2 additional minutes, so please, I appreciate
Well,
your
I
efforts.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you're trying to get our attention and get you on get us on your side, that doesn't help. It doesn't. Everybody else has been respectful.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir, your name?
Randy Hansen.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of questions here about who's going to regulate the trucks going through Bennett on the other side of the bridge. That was one of the questions I had. The other thing is, too, who's talking about the first responders that are going to have to deal with this problem? The first responders, the people that we should be looking to see whether they want to approve this project, because it's going to be a dangerous project. There's no way in and out from our area if there's a fire. We just saw that 3 years ago, and we brought that up before. A stop sign at Bennett would cause traffic back into the 76, which would be a major problem there for backing cars up on that road. The other thing, too, is they keep talking about Ocean Ranch. Ocean Ranch is a great area to build a property like this. Ocean Ranch still has land out there that you can build on, that you can, got a 3-lane highway from Oceanside Boulevard to access it. And they keep pointing towards the original facility. The original facility, again, was 160,000 feet or square feet, or 170,000 square feet with 16 truck bays. This is nothing compared to that. I really think that you should reject this project and really consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, do I push something or? Can you
No,
hear me?
you're ready to go. Could you
Okay,
tell us your name, please?
Madison Moorhead Lang.
Thank you.
I have just two comments based on what I've heard all evening. Number one, if I understand this, even though the contract says they're going to do 57 or whatever they change the base to, they can legally go up to 114 if someone says, hey, we could use 114. We can't keep it at 57. So that's a bad thing. And number two, whoever that gentleman was that was giving out the planning, I don't know his name, but he said that all the exits and everything from all the neighborhoods has been approved, and that's not true. I live on Mulatto Highlands, HOA, and if you look at the map, and I ask you to please look at the map, it's a society of homes that live in a circle. If there's a fire at the 76 freeway where the riverbed goes down and meets it, and it gets any bigger, we're not going to be able to get out that way, and nobody else will either, because the freeway will be a zoo. So then you hang a U and you think, oh, I'll go out Benet. Well, no, because that's where the 157 trucks or whatever they're going to be by that time are going to be trying to escape. I'd like to ask the company who's building this, have they given any thought to if there's a fire, are they going to try to escape with the 57 trucks or however many they are at that time? I'm assuming they would. It's their job and their money. If this is all congregating where the riverbed ends at the 76, if there's a big fire there, that's where Ocean Camp is, the 6,000 cars who come every day. This is going to be a zoo, and we're going to die just like paradise, and I think that guy should look it over again. That's it.
Thank you.
If there's any other individual speakers that would like to come forward before we start group speaks. Please state your name for the gallery.
Marion Donahue, and good evening, Commissioners, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk with you. When I looked out the window that early morning day, the sky was a beautiful blue. But little did I know that giant plumes of smoke and flames of fire were just behind the hill on the other side of our house in the Santa Ana winds. A fire was rapidly racing towards us, but the only warning we got was a fist pounding on the front door and a voice screaming these words, "Fire's here! Get out now!" We had less than 12, 15, maybe 15 at the most, to grab a few documents and drive madly down the one available exit road to get our daughters and ourselves to safety. Our oldest daughter at the time had stood on the kindergarten playground looking up at the fiery hillside, believing that her parents were dead. In our panic state, we had left the family pet, a large Dalmatian dog who had been outside the house. But we were unable to turn the car around in the impossible traffic jam. So my husband handed the wheel to me and hiked back towards our street through smoke to rescue the dog. I continued to maneuver the car toward the elementary school. Once our 1-year-old baby and 5-year-old daughter was safely gathered, I finished the initial evacuation journey to my parents' home in another town. Fire difficulties prevented firsthand communication during that chaotic situation. My mother, father, and I sat waiting on the living room sofa. We watched TV for news while trying to comfort my daughter and give hope to her as she kept asking, "Will Daddy be okay? Will Daddy be okay?" In our heads, my family ticked off the minutes that evolved into hours, praying for any news at all about the fate of my husband. It wasn't until after 6 p.m. that night that we finally heard his voice on a phone and knew he was actually alive. The San Bernardino Panorama fire that I lived through lasted over 6 days, with most damage occurring on the first day. The cause was an unidentified homeless person who had been trying to cook a meal in 50 to 90 mile per hour Santa Ana winds. Though not deliberately set, it was still deemed arson by Orange County investigators who compiled all data. Firefighters, planes, equipment, and help both within California and from other states. They arrived to battle and contain the blaze. The final written report listed 4 people dead, 286 homes destroyed, and another 113 structures damaged or destroyed. In total, the fire consumed 23,800 acres. The Panorama Fire occurred in a CAL FIRE VHFHSZ, and for those who want to know what that means, it's a very high fire hazard severity zone. Eddie Jones warehouses will be built in the middle of a designated CAL FIRE very high fire hazard severity zone right here in Riverside. Check your plans. This area also hosts hidden homeless encampments, wherein smoke is often seen rising from the surrounding dry terrain, the cause of the fire I lived through. We experience gusty year-round winds on a daily basis. We also experience Santa Ana strength winds in this area. This year, I underwent an ambulance ride to the site where a pacemaker for my heart was implanted. It was a frightening experience during normal circumstances, but I can't imagine my ambulance having to navigate diesel trucks on a narrow exit road. The fact is that no matter what causes the emergency, be it a fire, earthquake, or medical crisis, a safe exit street is mandatory. And to Dan, who said that it was going to take 12 months to build this thing, I don't think those traffic studies were considering all the trucks and all the traffic that will be on Bennett Road carrying construction materials to build that. Okay, traffic from diesel trucks and warehouse employees will not only magnify dangers, but they can possibly cost lives. And if you're not one who's lost one in a fire, it's terrible. My concerns are real. I have experienced evacuating from a fire on a one-way out road with emergency vehicles trying to get through, and I don't ever want to do it again. It is easy to believe it will never happen to you until it does. Please do not approve this project, which will endanger lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, that was our first group speaker, and that would have consisted of Marion Donahue, Jean O'Neill, Judy Bonilla, and Carol Gruber. And up next is our second group speakers, starting with, I believe Mike Tenavar is going to be the speaker, and part of the group is also Mira Tenavar, Stephanie, DeMacade, sorry, and then Debbie Wanamaker.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thanks for your time this evening. And also, I want to thank the staff here for their fine work on this project. My name is Mike Tenover, 873 Waller Drive. And I'll start with the CAL FIRE map. We talked about that a minute ago. That big red splotch in the middle, that is the high fire zone the previous speaker mentioned. My understanding is that it's the only large one in Oceanside. I'll note that 80% of all the land hit by wildfire in California has been in zones like this throughout the state. So as a neighborhood, we take this very seriously. We have in place fire safety programs. And our goal is every year to make our neighborhoods safe. So now we have the introduction of a truck terminal. And of course, we have to evaluate that in the context of our safety program. And our truck terminal, be very clear, we're concerned about how many trucks will be on site during a wildfire emergency and how that will affect the response. So there's been a wildfire evacuation study done in the FEIR. Thanks for doing that. That study concluded that the evacuation time with that truck terminal present is 1 hour and 32 minutes. The fire threat to our homes is about 2 hours, and that's from a model. However, when you look at the model, you realize that when they do that model, they choose a site that's far away from our homes. It's on flat ground. It's in an area with almost no fuel and a wind direction that's away from our homes. That's not realistic here. Study needs to look at the yellow stars I have planted there. Those are the areas we identified in our FireWise program certification process with CAL FIRE. These are the areas with abundant fuel, an upward slope, and sources of ignition. So I'd like to revise this study. Evacuation time, 1 hour and 32 minutes. However, the fire threat to our homes is not 2 hours. If you look at these yellow stars and think about what I just said, it's more like 30 minutes. So I think this study has proven this is not safe. We've been saying this for the last 3 years. We don't think this is safe for our neighborhood. In a wildfire area, you can't take any compromise on safety. And I implore you to not go down there. Is there a viable plan here? I don't know. I like to use the quote from that famous philosopher, boxer Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until I punch him in the face. And a wildfire, we're afraid it's going to punch us in the face here if we're not careful and serious about safety. So let me look now at where we're going to locate this truck terminal. And I'll show you a map here of the City of Oceanside. And right in the center, you see a very high level of lead. That's the airport. The airport is our leading source of airborne lead in the city. We use leaded fuel. The leaded fuel produces lead dibromide nanoparticles. Next to this, we're going to put a truck terminal that makes diesel particulate material. So let's have a look at what that means. Slide. So I borrowed this little cartoon here from a publication. I have the reference there. So let's first look at the physics here. We have a diesel particulate particle, which is a dielectric. We have a lead dibromide, which is an ionic conductor, ionic compound, and it's in the form of nanoparticle. In proximity, these two materials will agglomerate, as I show in the cartoon here, and that's driven by the very high surface energy of the nanoparticle. So to understand this, we have a model, and I have it in the table there, and I'll walk you through just a simple part of the model. So for example, if we have a PM 10 micron diesel particle, it'll settle in the air at 61 feet per hour. If I have a smaller particle, let's say 2.5 microns now, it'll settle in the air at 4 feet per hour, much slower. Both of those particles will stay in Oceanside. Now let's look at the aircraft particle, the lead dibromide nanoparticle. Now it's so small, it doesn't settle. It stays suspended in the air. That particle will drift away, disperse, and it'll be gone. Good for Oceanside, the lead is out of the city. Now, let's go back up to the cartoon. As I said, we're going to put a truck terminal right next to the runway of the airport. We have now have chance to form these agglomerates because these particles are now in proximity. You go to the chart now, you look at the model at the bottom there. Now we have a lead dibromide aggregate, agglomerate, with the diesel particle. Now the settling velocity is back to 4 feet per hour. So that particle stays in Oceanside. It's a combination of lead and a diesel particle, and we'll get a chance to breathe it. So my question to the commission here today is, has anyone ever put a truck terminal so incredibly close to an airport runway in which the aircraft use leaded fuel? I don't know the answer to that. I've been looking around on Google Earth trying to find that. I don't see it. If you find it, I'd like to know what happens in terms of the environmental and the pollution aspect. I will note there is no level of lead that's considered safe. Now, back to our homes. When our homes were built, in mitigation for our homes, we had to set aside some land, and we did. But we did more than that. We put together a preserve. 20 years later, it's now the most biodiverse area in all of Oceanside. People from all over the county come to see this place. It's an amazing place. And it's amazing for two reasons. One, of course, is the hard work of all the volunteers. But more importantly, what has emerged in the last 20 years is a wildlife corridor has developed. Let me explain what that is. So you see on the chart here, the Wanna's View Preserve. It's way too small to have this level of diversity. It's a tiny little 77 acres. But this network of thousands of acres of wildlife now allow this to happen. Here comes a truck terminal. Well, it's almost like we're strangling this network here. Can't imagine a worse thing to put here or a worse location. Okay, now, go ahead. I've looked at noise. My background's in physics, so I like doing calculations. So I've been looking at the noise at our Wanna's View homes. A lot of people talked about that tonight. And I've also done measurements on site. The red line there is the original design. It was very noisy. The blue line now is better. But I'll tell you, at times, we will still hear noise from that warehouse operations 5 times larger than background. If it's at 2 p.m., it's probably okay. If it's 2 a.m., it's a big problem. So I'm going to finish now with a chart, because I know the staff likes charts, so I've got a chart for you. So my chart is, I have the issues. If the current zoning stays in place and no CUP, we're okay. We'll welcome our new neighbors. However, if this conditional use permit is approved, we got problems. Number one, it's a terrible message to send. A truck terminal is more important than wildfire safety. I don't believe that. Put the truck terminal right next to the runway. It's a terrible image for Oceanside. 2 toxic pollution sources right next to each other, doing some unusual, unknown chemistry, and eventually, obviously, a bad for reputation of Oceanside. Biodiversity, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it could be catastrophic if we do this. I mean, all that will be lost. And the noise of homeowners, as I said, the noise levels are too high. In traffic, if we've heard about traffic, you look at the Highway 76 in Bennett. Right now, it's a D, and we hate that. It's going to go to an F. So now you step back, and you say, if you approve this conditional use permit, we're going to sacrifice. We're sacrificing our safety. We're sacrificing the health of ourselves and our children. We're sacrificing an incredible wildlife preserve and the ecosystem. And we're sacrificing our quality of life. All that for a truck terminal. I think it's a bad deal for us. I think it's a bad deal for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll introduce our next group of speakers. Will be Carol McConnell, Kimberly Johnson, Dave Keck, and Kimberly Stone. And I assume, are you Carol McConnell?
I am.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Nice to meet you. Hi, my name is Dr. Carol McConnell. Before I go with my prepared statements, I'd like to just interject something that's based on what I heard earlier. I used to work in biotech pharmaceutical, specifically in the Silicon Valley area, well through the 90s and early 2000s. I guarantee you there wasn't a single facility where there's high-paying jobs with a PhD, bench researchers, et cetera, that were in buildings with truck terminals. So there's an absolute non sequitur going on here where they stand in front of you and talk about the jobs that they're going to bring and the high-paying jobs when they're really building truck terminals. Just an observation. Now my prepared statements. So my job as sort of the wrap-up artist here is to bring together the themes that we heard this evening, to hit the highlights, to really punch out some of the variables that are really important to those of us in the neighborhood, and then to look at options. Let's look forward to what we can do with this piece of land. So first and foremost, we're all responsible for the ideals and vision of this city. That includes those in front of me and those behind me. We know that part of the strategic plan of Oceanside is to honor tourism. It's a part of our character. It's also a big part of our long-term prosperity. And all of the things that I see on this slide here are things that the downtown area brings to us. But I would also argue that tourism as a key economic driver also extends inland with the bicycle trail, the Go Jump Adventure skydiving, et cetera. We also have Ocean Camp coming. If you go to Ocean Camp's website, they actually advertise that you can rent a bicycle and pedal to the beach. So I asked, does this project align with the ethos of our city? First and foremost, let's talk about the traffic. To summarize a bit, I have studied quite a bit of the mathematical models used to say the traffic impact goes from grade D to F. What I don't see, I see one heavy truck is 2-car equivalent. What I don't see is a conversation about the weight of these vehicles. We all know that behind a heavily laden truck making a right turn, it takes far more than the equivalent of 2 cars moving through that intersection. Also, the length of the vehicles. The lengths of these trucks are going to cause congestion. If you ever seriously look at the intersection of 76 and Benet, Airport Road comes in there too. It's almost a 5-point intersection. So if you have long trucks, that's going to affect that speed of Airport Road as well. The biggest concern for me, at least, as someone who's clinically trained, is the air pollution. In the appendix of the environmental impact report, it describes diesel exhaust from heavy trucks as a complex mixture of gases, vapors, and particles with known carcinogens. The plume of a single diesel truck will spread as far as 43 feet. Now, what we're being led today by the developer is that 56 truck terminals is significantly better than 114. And I question that that can be true. So let's talk about those trucks. Yes, they've reduced it down to 56 high dock truck terminals, but also on the property in the current design that's being proposed is 45 grade level. This is 101 truck access points on this property, both heavy diesel, small trucks, as well as vans. To address Commissioner Ogden's question about the attorney from Sacramento and the air pollution expert, that information came from a community group. Back in 2023, the Oceanside Speaks Out group ran a GoFundMe campaign. We raised over $12,000 from 132 people, and we hired that attorney in Sacramento and the air pollution expert. That air pollution expert is Ray Kapahi. He's an environmental permitting specialist. He created a technical memorandum dated in 2023. It was submitted as part of the draft EIR comments. When the final EIR came out in January last month, Mr. Kapahi immediately emailed us and said none of his comments related to impact had been addressed in the final EIR. So let's talk a little bit about what the final EIR actually says about pollution. It says in Table 4.2-8 that the daily operational criteria for air pollutant emissions would not exceed significant thresholds. Well, according to Mr. Kapahi, who is an expert in this space, there's 2 fundamental problems with this assertion. Number one, the calculations were made using old standards. There are new standards in those of the world of air pollution metrics. This report failed to honor those new standards. Additionally, and this is the most critical one, it's using the metric of daily mass emissions rate in their measure of air pollutants and fails to assess the nearby concentration of pollutants. So what does that mean? Let's come up with a relatable example for those of us who are lay people. Failing to acknowledge the concentration of air pollutants is like sitting next to a campfire and saying, there's no smoke here because the 24-hour daily mass emissions rate for the region is not high. It's important to understand the terminology that they're throwing around in this environmental impact report. Emissions are pollutants released into the atmosphere expressed as a total mass. Concentration refers to the amount of pollutants per volume of air, amount of pollutants in the air at any given time or place. When assessing true exposure to the people in the immediate area, concentration is the metric that people who are professionals in this space use. It is much more accurate, and it better captures what is actually inhaled or absorbed. This is a diagram pulled from Mr. Kapahi's assessment, that technical memorandum that he says no one paid attention to in the final EIR. This is the San Luis Rey River Valley, and part of the issue here is the topography. The Reverend from the Prince of Peace Abbey mentioned it. There's high cliffs on either side, creating a bit of a dishbowl effect. Here is where the Eddie Jones project will be with its diesel trucks. Due to the prevailing winds, the emissions of the particulate matter will gather up the river valley and mostly hover upstream. This is where the skate park is, right near the bullseye of where the particulate matters will hover. This is where the ocean camp is. The highest area of concentration of pollutants is going to be hovering over ocean camp, what we're building to draw tourists in from all over Southern California. This is the bike path. The red line, as it follows the river, goes immediately adjacent to the skate park and immediately adjacent to these diesel trucks. And this is where the parachutists get to drop down, right down in the middle of this. They get to go right through the smoke and the plume of diesel fuel. So let's define our terms a little bit. PM10 is a particulate matter with a diameter of 10 micrometers. The PM10 airborne particles can be inhaled into the lungs. They can easily also be ingested through the mouth, nose, or throat. Studies have shown that short-term exposure to even short-term exposure to PM10s may increase the risk of heart and lung disease. And let's not forget, according to that map, what we just saw, who is it we're exposing? We're exposing children. We're exposing children and teenagers who are exercising, breathing heavily, and purposely drawing air deep into their lungs. So how are we doing in our goal of honoring the duty of the city's ideal and visions? I would argue that we're not doing such a great job. How do we explain that we chose to allow an industrial-scale pollution along a bicycle river trail populated daily by people and wildlife? How do we explain to tourists that we invite into our city who pedal from Ocean Camp to the Oceanside Harbor and Beach that we knowingly created an area of disproportionately high risk? And it's not like we can say we didn't know. There's lots of research out there now showing the effects of warehouses and on human health. This is a study from UC Davis published in October of 2023, stating that there is significant evidence of warehouses creating adverse health effects, leading to health equity disparities and grave health risks to frontline communities. I ask again, why would we knowingly create a potential environmental injustice neighborhood? So, how do we move forward? What's our option here? You have the tools in your toolbox to make a difference here for this community who is gravely concerned about this diesel truck warehouse going in near our homes. You can honor the zoning ordinance as it's written today. We have never contested the land being used for light industry. You've heard that thematically over and over. It aligns with the historical use of the property. It aligns with the other light industry in the immediate area south of the runway, south of Highway 76. It aligns with the fact that Caltrans has confirmed that they have no plans whatsoever to improve Highway 76 at the intersection of Benet. It aligns with the City of Oceanside's budget, where they need to maintain and service roads that will be used by heavy diesel trucks. The $50,000 pot of money to alleviate the wear and tear on the streets or the traffic, or whatever, is truly laughable. It also aligns with tourist-centric and recreational activities immediately adjacent and downwind from this parcel of land. So let's come up with an example. How could this land be used? I bring to you an option. This is a business park that exists here in Oceanside. It's called Oceanside Gateway. It's about the same size. It is multiple multi-use industrial buildings with warehouses and flex space.
Can you
highly
wrap it
functional,
up?
And here's a picture of what it looks like. Clean and no heavy trucks. The theme throughout the evening has been the heavy trucks. With that, I ask you your call to action. Just say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That concludes our group speakers. Chair Morrissey, also, I don't know if it's appropriate, but at this time, I'd also like to state for the record, the applicant has 11 minutes and 26 seconds left.
Thank you. So would the applicant like to rebut anything that was said?
Yeah, thank you, and hopefully you can go through a few of the questions that maybe have been asked throughout the night. But again, Dan Niebaum again with the Lightfoot Planning Group. Try to follow up on some of these issues, and we do have our technical experts with us too if you had additional questions. But going through the notes and taking through, obviously, traffic and fire, common concerns, themes throughout, and major things that we have studied throughout this project. Related to the traffic comments as they've been iterated, back to the comment about the fair share improvement. From the chart you've seen, the level of service is what that really comes down to. Under CEQA, level of service is not a traffic issue. It's not a CEQA issue anymore. VMT is the CEQA issue. And we have our VMT analysis and our mitigation for that. But for the level of service and why we're doing the fair share at the intersection, it does go down from a D to an F, but that's in a cumulative condition. When this project's added into the other 18 projects that we studied along the corridor, in the near term, which is a few years out, when our project's built, with those projects being built, and in the horizon year, which is way out, when there's even more traffic in the area. There's 60,000 trips on the 76 right now, and our study shows we'd add 1,200 with this project. That's a 1.9% factor. That gets mixed in with our analysis and with the other level of service out there at the intersection, so that becomes a failing intersection. It goes from a D to an F. But if the improvements made to make the right turn lanes also combination through lanes or 3-lane improvement through there, that's the improvement that was looked at. Our share, that's 8.5%. Our cost on that's the $50,000. That's about a $580,000 improvement. But that fair share is determined based on this project's proportion of the cumulative projects in the area. And that's how it works with fair share anywhere in the city with an improvement. So that was the identified improvement for the area. And that improvement then would bring the level of service back up to a D or an E, which is an acceptable level of service. That was analyzed with the city's traffic department as part of our analysis. That was what was accepted, part of the project. I think some of the comments that are made for fire, recognizing that's a very emotional issue and a very scary issue. We did do a full wildfire evacuation study. It's not required by CEQA, but it was a comment we heard early on and a comment we heard often. And so we did a full evacuation study. Some of those items were recently questioned by one of the last group speakers, but that study was done in conjunction with Oceanside Fire Department, with OPD, with their input, and with our experts and analysis in that area. The starting point in the modeled scenarios in the fire, there's 9 different scenarios that were modeled in the report. And so it's based on a worst case scenario. Santa Ana wind condition, which is why that starting location is to the east. Because Santa Ana's are going to blow it back toward the neighborhood and in the river valley. And that location was, again, determined as most likely based on previous fire history in the area and again, with the input of OFD and experts. And so that modeling location was chosen and put into the model system. And again, the longest evacuation time was 1 hour and 32 minutes, and the modeling shows it would take nearly 2 hours for that fire under the extreme conditions, 90-degree day, low humidity, 30-mile-an-hour winds to reach that neighborhood. Evacuations become targeted now. It's targeted evacuation. It's much more surgical. I think you heard some of these comments 2 weeks ago related to similar concerns. The technology is vastly improved to evacuate these neighborhoods in a safe and quick manner. But our study, I think, speaks for itself, and it's part of our application pack. Several comments related to our EIR and the technical reports related to noise, air quality. And I would just say that the last comment about the EPS letter and the Mooney comment, we did respond clearly to those comments. They're in the response to comments. That group made comments when the EIR was released over a year ago. We fully responded to those, and that response to comments is in the final EIR. Whether they agree with our technical analysis, that's a whole different thing. But the response to comments were clearly done, and we responded to every one of their comments. Again, with the noise, that was another comment we heard, with the original project design with bays facing out toward the neighborhood. That's why the project turned the buildings and created a 4-building design, turned the bays inward, and the bays have screening walls on the ends, especially on the end where the neighborhood would be. Those are 19 to 20 feet high, approximately 30, 35 feet wide to screen the truck bays. There's a large landscape buffer along the northern boundary that you've seen and that you're asking about in conjunction with the bike path levee, which helps to screen and buffer noise from that site. And so the landscape and the distance from the neighborhood all help to lessen the noise impact on the area. And comments on the air quality analysis, as part of the technical analysis, our consultants did a health risk assessment, which takes into account sensitive receptors in the nearby areas, residents, schools, and other things that are in that area. And the health risk assessment fully evaluated that. Our air quality analysis evaluated those kind of impacts and again determined a less than significant impact. And we would stand by the technical analysis that's part of our EIR. And then I think ultimately, we've talked about the development plan, the number of bays, and is this 114 bays or not? It's not. What we've submitted is 56 bays. If a future user or tenant were to come forward and say, we need more truck bays and we want to put them in, they'd have to come back in front of this body. They'd have to submit a revised application to planning staff and have that evaluated. Just like any other project where a development plan is approved, if the development plan is changed or not followed, there's procedures for that. In this case, they were to do a large increase or an increase in the dock doors, they'd have to come back and have that evaluated. So, and finally, lack of talking about tenants and type of tenants in here, and I mentioned, answered a question earlier, very hard to have those tenants until a facility like this is under construction. But I would not let the lack of a tenant, affect the evaluation of a land use decision. That's in front of you tonight, and I think we've heard that comment several times. So I'm happy to answer any questions or have our team try to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Rosales?
I have follow-up questions for staff, not for Dan.
Okay. Anybody have a question for Dan? Thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
You're out of order, sir.
Okay, so
if you want to call someone up,
yeah.
Commissioner.
Excuse me, sir, I'm speaking.
You're out of order, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if you would follow the rule of order, because I think you learned that along the way. There's rules here. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair Morrissey. To my first question I asked long ago for staff, Dan kind of addressed it, but I want to get city staff to address my question about the fair share cost. And right after that, I have a question for our fire department on the issue. By the way, thank you for everybody that spoke in front of us, and the 10-minute presentations were very enlightening and very helpful to try to understand a few things that maybe I didn't catch elsewhere. So thank you for that. So I'll start with this question. I think I can repeat it if you want, or you heard it earlier. The question was about the fair share amount, how it was developed. Dan kind of answered that. Do you want to just confirm that that's how we arrived at the 50,000, or is there something else related to that?
Good evening, Commissioner and Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Tila Cotter. I'm the city traffic engineer with Oceanside. I'm going to defer that question over to the consultant that calculated the fair share. Justin?
Good evening. Justin Rosses with LOS Engineering. The summary Dan provided was correct. The 8.5% is calculated using formulas that the city provided, and the 8.5 is taken against roughly 580,000 to reach the $50,000 figure.
So it's a one-time calculation, and it's not revisited, even if there are projects later on that this project would have an impact in terms of traffic or maintenance on the road. It's just a one-time off. Is that how this works?
The fair share is for the cumulative effect for this project and not for other projects.
Okay, Tia, maybe this question's for you then. In the resolution, the language suggests that if this 50,000 is collected for this project, it can be used elsewhere in the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
And why would that be?
The funds would benefit other portions of the city, and more specifically would try to aim for that area of maybe even like for sidewalks or for crosswalks or something in the general area in that vicinity, maybe even cross on the other side of 76. But to have some form, because the improvements can't take place on 76, so it will help us make improvements at least within Oceanside.
Okay, maybe I have a question for Sergio then. I suppose if we're not really happy with this 50,000 one-time cost sharing, we could park into the resolution something else that we think is more amenable to the potential impact of all of these trucks on Bennett or anywhere else. Do I have that right?
So Commissioner Rosales, to add a condition of approval that requires an exaction, a fee to be paid, it would have to be based on a formula, have to be based on an identified project. It would have to be based on some nexus that this project has with respect to the improvement we're asking them to make or pay for. So in absence of that, I don't think it would be legal to add a condition. We just pull $500,000 out of there as an example and say we want the project to have pay $500,000 and we'll keep it in an escrow account, and when the pavement gets bad at that project, we're going to use it to repair the road. So there has to be a clear nexus that this project has an impact that needs to be mitigated.
Wow, that's surprising. Okay, I'll leave that issue. I'll go to I think that we called it the wildfire evacuation plan. Thank you, Tia. Ask our fire department reps to come up here. If you wouldn't introduce yourself, and then I'll pose a question.
Happy to. Chair Morrissey, Commissioners, Blake Dorse, Division Chief of the Community Risk Reduction Division for the Fire Department.
Thank you. We had a similar issue at our last Planning Commission meeting where there was a development that was also bordering some, I'll call it, wild open area. And so we had the same gentleman speak to us about their analysis. So I guess I pose the same question. You heard some of the commentary here. This one looks even more extreme. You've got the riverbed there. You had a hand in looking at the model that was executed. That all being said, I come away with a sense of, oh my gosh, because there's a lot going on there. And I think in everybody's mind, what happened up in LA, which really wasn't bordered by open area, was an eye-opener for me and a whole lot of other people. So I'm left with kind of a sense of, you've got a model, but the model doesn't seem like, I didn't get a great deal of confidence from the model, the conclusions of the model. So help us understand that, no, we're good here, or maybe we're not good.
Happy to answer that for you. There's a lot to unpack here, so I'm going to try to be brief with it, but get to the point on your concern as well as some of the concerns that the speakers spoke to today. So just to clarify the fire department's role in something like this is that we do not provide evacuation studies. We don't have the staff or capacity to do so. So when a project comes through like this, what we'll do is we'll condition the developer to have a third party who does this type of work and has experts in the field to produce a study. Then we will evaluate that study to see if we feel that it's accurate, and that's what we've done here. To your point, this project is somewhat different than the project we met about last time, because this is, and some of the speakers spoke to it, in a very high fire hazard zone. So right off the bat, from the fire department perspective, it raises our level of concern, and we're going to take a very, very close look at anything that comes across our desk. So with that being said, some of the things that we look at are the construction features of the project, and being in a very high fire hazard severity zone requires the project to meet higher standards in its construction features. It also has to have 2 methods of emergency egress. And so we condition the project with those things based on where it's located. We also condition the project to have an evacuation study performed. There are a lot of variables that come into fire modeling, which is separate from what the evacuation study is. The model that you saw in that evacuation study actually came from the fire department, because that is something that we can look at through Genesis software. Genesis software is the same software that we use to notify people of evacuations. It's something relatively new in the last year, and since I'm speaking in a public forum, I'll encourage everybody to download the Genesis app on their phone so they can be up to date on evacuations. But that software allows us to also do fire modeling. When we took a look at the initial evacuation study that was provided to us by the consultant, we rejected it. And the reason we rejected it is I wanted more. So it had a limited scope, in my opinion. I wanted to see more scenarios in that. And so as we were going back and forth, they said, well, what are you referring to? And I said, well, for instance, a Santa Ana wind condition is the worst case scenario we would look at. So, you can't put a model to the west of the fire, because in a Santa Ana, it's going to blow to the west away from the project. So I loaded up a model for them. I showed them the model. I said, hey, look, here's an area of the city where I personally have been to a lot of brush fires, and we dropped the fire right there. And so that's the model that you see. It actually came from the fire department. And the reason I did that is I said, hey, when you do this, let's see how long this takes before it cuts off one of the 2 evacuation routes from that neighborhood, because it is in a very high severity zone. It has to have 2 evacuation routes to that main artery of the 76. So you have Bennett and Fusat. So we effectively cut off Fusat, and I said, that's what I want to see. I want to see you go down to that level where we've cut off an evacuation route. And so they were able to provide me that information, and that's what the final evacuation study shows. So to go on from that, when you look at those 2 evacuation routes, and I know a lot of people get concerned about being able to evacuate and if one is cut off, and even though I'm the one that said, hey, look, I want to see what this looks like with one cut off, I think the reality of one of those being cut off is much different than the reality we see in some more rural areas. For example, the Paradise Fire was brought up when you have heavy timber right up against the roadway. it creates an environment where people just can't evacuate. And that's not the scenario we see here. Up against the roadways, we don't have large stands of trees or vegetation like that. So I think that's highly unlikely. However, I still wanted to take a look. The data from the evacuation study, which was done, based on the amount of vehicles that would be leaving the area and it being done in a rapid fashion all at once, showed an increase in 10 minutes for the neighborhood up in that area. And so based on that portion of the study, I don't feel like that's a significant threat to the community adding 10 minutes. I'm confident that with the technology we use today, with the response we have, that 10 minutes isn't going to affect whether or not we're able to evacuate that community.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to any other commissioners.
Any other questions for the fire department? Thank you.
What about an Ember storm coming down Staten
Does any questions for any applicant or? Go ahead, Commissioner Bowman.
I guess we heard a lot tonight, and we read a lot tonight about the trucks. That to me is like the hot button with everybody in here, including myself. And I'm just kind of looking at this whole idea of it. I know Arlene, the applicant, actually gave us some scenarios of other projects that RPG have built, which are like quality projects. There's no doubt you guys know what you're doing. But the one you did kind of show us that kind of was supposed to be compromised, kind of like this is kind of a one that's similar to the one we're doing. You showed that there was like during the peak times, there was 7 trucks that came in and there was 4 trucks that came out. So that's like not that many trucks at all. So when you think about it, this one's got, 56 truck bays. And when you look at the kinds of people you're trying to attract, like the medical kind of field, like, and 2 of our commissioners actually worked in that field, know that truck bays aren't really needed for people like Merck or people like in the biochemistry kind of worlds. And we do like office and manufacturing. Yes, 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 more of that in Oceanside. I think the building sizes and everything you've done is great. I think that's not a problem. I don't think with any of the people either. It's the trucks and the truck bays. I mean, if there's any way you can look at your truck bay quantities and pare them back down to something more that would be palatable to everybody in this room, that might be something we can all compromise on. I mean, what you've done with your studies and your noises and your everything else is in line as far as I'm concerned. It's just the quantity of the truck bays that we would like to see if there's a way you could maybe reduce that for the neighborhood. That's just a statement.
Commissioner Malik?
Yeah, I guess along those lines as well, I'm just like some clarification. A few comments were made about the EIR being tied to the 114 spaces, vice the 56 that are now proposed. Is there any validity to that statement, and how does that affect is the EIR and that, are they two connected in that way?
So thank you for your question, Commissioner Malik. So to be clear, the EIR and what was analyzed as the proposed project analyzed the most intense scenario, 114 truck bays. But the project conditions, the project description, and the resolution that's before you tonight limits the number of truck bays to 56. And so as Mr. Niebaum mentioned earlier, if they wanted to do 100 truck bays, we wouldn't necessarily need to do another environmental analysis because that's been analyzed already and shown that there's no significant impacts associated with that that have been identified. But they would have to come back for a revision to this entitlement that's being considered tonight to increase the number of truck bays. So as part of the conditional use permit process, we're limiting the number of truck bays to 56.
Commissioner Dodds?
First, I want to thank Commissioner Balmer for your statement. I wholeheartedly agree. There's been, what impressed me, 5,400 plus signatures. The hot topic is the trucks. So that is something we should really consider. But sorry, I do have a question concerning the fair share value. I understand it's a one-time payment. Help me to understand, why is it just one time, where you look at the length of time that Deutsche was there, so we're looking at whatever is going to be there, it's going to be at least 40 years. Why is there just one payment when it's significantly going to be impacted far longer than that?
So the way, Commissioner Dodd, to answer your question, the way exactions are elicited from development, it's a time of development. So we can't anticipate, it's the city's responsibility ultimately to make sure that the roads are in good repair and functioning to the best we can. The city doesn't control that intersection of Benet Road and 76, Caltrans does. But we do control is Bennett Road. And in the future, after the payment of this fee, if that road were to fall into disrepair, it would be the city's responsibility to bring it up to standard. And so that would be done through the capital improvement project process. The city does, and maybe the city engineer could speak a little bit to this, the city does have a pavement evaluation plan where they have cataloged and categorized the conditions of roads, and I think they get repaired in the priority in which the repair is needed. So that's a function of the city. We can't put the developer on the hook for an ongoing cost that's ultimately the city's responsibility. We could collect one-time fees, one-time payments. They're known as broadly as development impact fees, but we can't continue to collect fees on an ongoing basis for those types of those types of projects.
Commissioner Ogden. I hate to sound like a broken record, but you're asking me to certify the environmental impact report. I still don't know what the answers to these issues that were brought up on the February 10th letter that we talked about. So I guess my question to you, Sergio, is how do we handle that?
So what Commissioner Ogden, what often happens with these types of projects is we get correspondence that has a perspective of a competing interest. In this case, it's a claim that's made, and that the previous statements made by this group weren't adequately responded to, and that's just someone's opinion. Okay. We have a team of experts that have prepared this document, and it meets all the legal standards required for an EIR to meet. And so I think this is just one of those things where you can't agree to agree.
Okay. Commissioner Anthony?
Thank you. There's a lot to unpack on this thing, and so I mean we've been inundated with information. One of the things that did come up, it was about the tenant and who's going to be occupying this warehouse buildings and all of these things. Not knowing that information, not knowing what they're going to have in there. I'm a safety guy. I'm concerned about, you're going to have hazardous materials in there or things of that nature. We're talking about the fire safety. I'm thinking about fire within the facility. Over the 4-year period, you had like 1,500 warehouse fires. Okay, so I don't know what type of business is going to be in there, how that is going to pose a threat to the community, just from the businesses there. But your reports come back, they seem to be a little, I'm just going to put it in layman's terms, they seem to be a little shaky. Okay. They just don't answer the questions definitively enough for me. So I don't know. I'm kind of like you, Commissioner Ogden. They're there. They say the right words, but I don't know where we would get that certainty of and clarity on those issues that we're looking at. So that's all I have to say on that.
You bet. Commissioner Malik.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up on the truck bay numbers. There's 56 truck bays. I'm assuming that's a dock door with an ability to put a semi-trailer up to it, correct? are there, I guess with that, are there other door access as well? When I look at the specs, are there roll-up doors for other access that could be utilized for other vehicle types to be loaded other than a semi-trailer?
Vice Chair Malik, that would be correct. The truck terminals themselves that face the interior include the truck docks, which are the actual bays where a semi-trailer would back up to the door. There's also docks for loading roll-up doors and ramps that would provide access. So if there was a van or a pallet being brought out, those are traditional service bays, but they're not actual truck terminals. There wouldn't be an ability for a heavy truck to park a truck or a trailer at those doors.
And so what's that total number of potential vehicle loading spots there to include, I guess, a light vehicle loading as well as I'm just trying to understand the impact on the overall vehicle potential throughput in there to be in and out. With the dock doors, I get that. I've worked those. I've also worked in warehouse spaces where we have roll-up doors that you're loading light vehicles, so that don't require MHE to go in and out of a vehicle, but you can move it up and you push it in. So the total number of vehicle access loading spots per building or total in the footprint, what would that be?
The total of trucks is based on heavy trucks. The other types of loading dock would be considered incidental to the primary use. So if it's a warehouse facility, that's back of house. So a dock, those facilities are not regulated by a use permit or need to be counted towards a truck trip because it isn't necessarily a heavy truck. It could be a van or just used for loading and unloading of cargo via the ramps and those roll-up doors. So it's more of a traditional service door that's accessory to an industrial building.
So hypothetically, then, the roll-up doors as well as the dock doors could be used as, if you will, a cross-dock facility to utilize this as a quasi-fulfillment center for other uses. So you'd have actually more truck traffic in there than what we're looking at with a heavy truck. You could have a combination of light and heavy trucks in there. And it would still meet the criteria that the restrictions that we've got, because the restrictions are focused specifically to heavy trucks and the dock doors, where the other doors you have an ability to load others. And the reason why I ask that is that I understand we've got a kind of a mixed-use facility here that has got some manufacturing levels, but you've got a significant amount of warehouse and dock space as well. So when you're looking at that, the potential is there for how many total access doors?
I'm not, Vice Chair Malik, I'm not familiar with how many total access doors there are, but the trip generation provided in the traffic study is for overall vehicle trips in a day. A portion of those are heavy truck trips, and the way the traffic study counted those is for each heavy truck, you get assigned basically 2 vehicle trips a day, 2 standard vehicle trips a day. So as Rob mentioned, those uses would be incidental, those types of small vehicles would be incidental to the facility. And so we could not, I mean, the zoning ordinance isn't set up to regulate how many vehicles come in and out of a project site each day and whether they're carrying, products or they're just carrying people to work.
So then let me take a different tack on kind of where I'm going with this. If we don't know what the tenants are going to be, which I understand we wouldn't at this point, the buildings have been built. We've got a specific number of dock doors that are there for heavy vehicles. We've got a variety of other access doors that you could utilize for a cross-dock fulfillment light vehicle. When somebody applies for a business permit to operate there, are they required to identify how many vehicle trips they would have per day? And with that vehicle trips, is there any impact on the conditional use permit that we're talking about that would take that to a level of impacting that to say, no, we need to come back for another conditional use permit in order for a delivery service to be unnamed that would potentially go into this location, or others that would use it for, parcel deliveries, et cetera?
Certainly. So to answer
to help clarify where
you did.
Okay.
To answer your question on the number of additional doors besides the the ones that are designed for heavy trucks. It's 45 additional doors over the balance of the site. That being said, to answer your question about the business license, we typically would not require a traffic study or ADT calculations associated with uses that are allowed by rights. And so there's a host of uses that could be permitted by right there. Food processing, industry custom, industry general, industry limited, industry R&D. What's being regulated by the conditional use is the number of heavy truck trips, and it's classified as a truck terminal.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ballmer.
So then from just that, that's a lot of distribution and trucks, I think that we could probably ask the applicant to reduce the amount of trucks, heavy trucks, from 56 to something. Maybe that doesn't impact the traffic as much, maybe it doesn't impact the EIR as much, whatever that number is. I mean, it was, I know by right, by just being in this, without even going for conditional use permit, you said there was 18, right? That's given to them just because they're building on 3 parcels and they have so many truck bays, heavy trucks.
Each building could have 6.
So then 6. So then that's, that's a start of compromise. I mean, I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel about the statement that I just made, but I mean, I think that that's something we can actually put onto this project and see where it lands. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you guys all feel, but that would kind of help out with all of our comments we've had with traffic, with noise, with pollution. Everything is based on those diesel trucks. So if we kind of reduce those down to something that's more palatable for the neighborhood, then we've got a project that's really great. Still, I think, it's still a great project that can hopefully still attract great, tenants and not have so many truck bays.
Yeah, no, I like where you're going with this, Louise, and thank you, Chair, for letting me just jump in here. Because I've been struggling with a whole host of different things, and this angle or this idea is making me think, well, maybe we can get, like you said, to some place that is a more of a compromise thing. Because what I like about it is, what we talk about here in Oceanside is it brings jobs and so forth. That's what we're trying to do, where we can. There's a lot of positive things here, but man, I'm stuck on all sorts of other things. So I kind of like the angle or the direction you're moving, if we can get there. So I'll stop there.
Okay.
Commissioner Ogden?
I agree with that. One of the gentlemen from the audience said, I like the project, but I don't like this project. I mean, they're not against the development of that site. It's just what is being proposed. And maybe reducing that, as Louise mentioned, coming up with a compromise. I know you've already done that, based upon the first submission that you made, but a little bit more of taking into consideration what the neighborhood would like to see might go a long way. You get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Want to make a motion?
Well, 6 is like what the. I don't have a quantity. It's kind of almost the way an applicant might want to give us a little bit more of we say 6 per building, they say, 10 per building. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but we don't want 56. So it's like, what's the sweet spot? Because could the applicant come up and see if there's a sweet spot that maybe we can come together?
Thank you, commissioners. My name's Adam Robinson. I'm the president of RPG. So to give you a little bit of background, we've built a little over 1.6 million square feet of industrial in North San Diego County alone, some in some other markets as well, but every single project has been spec. So I wish I could tell you the tenant today. We've talked to tenants in the past. It's funny that the one gentleman mentioned a life science company because that actual company talked to us 3 years ago, and we kind of used their layout of how much warehouse they wanted, how much manufacturing they wanted, and how much office they wanted to help design these buildings. My building in Carlsbad with Merck is a little over 100,000 feet, and it has 12 docks. The Thermo Fisher building actually in Carlsbad has 20. So these buildings last 100 years, so we wanted to have some flexibility. They're multi-tenant. some people might need, 2 docks, some people might need 10. And so we really wanted to work with the community. In a perfect world, we wanted the higher dock count, we wanted the bigger building. But we knew that that was something the community was really against. So we've really tried to compromise as much as we really can. Now, could we reduce the dock count a little bit more? It might affect us being able to lease the buildings, but maybe a smaller amount that's 10 docks per building, knowing that we would want to be able to, because we did the EIR at the higher number, say, okay, we have Merck, they need 16 docks, we need 6 more docks, so that we would be able to then come back to you and say, we need that to be able to get this tenant. Because that's very important to us, just because, like I said, we still don't know, who that exact tenant's going to be.
With something like that, if the number of dock doors was reduced and then there was a need for additional, would that be an amendment to the conditional use permit?
Yeah.
To answer your question, Vice Chair Malik, yes, it would be a revision.
Okay. So it gets reviewed, and again, I fully appreciate wanting to optimize as a spec build to get the broadest sense of who your potential tenants are going to be. But if there's a way to reduce that number per building to meet to help assuage the challenges that we've seen here, with the potential, if there is an increase required or requested, it has to come back before us. I think that's certainly supportable. If the original or the current zoning is for 6, you mentioned 10 per building, we're still, we're at we almost cut the number of dock doors in half by what we're looking at.
56 to 40?
Yeah, no, 40. I thought we were going to 3 buildings. I was forgetting it was 4, yeah. I'd like to see it lower than that, because I think a reduction of that is not great, but I understand.
It's 56 to what?
40?
40.
40, okay, yeah.
And these are large buildings, so it's easy to say something like 40 docks is a lot, but when you go and look at the other project, La Pacifica, where we did the 24-hour traffic count, we just did that just to say we had no idea how many trucks were going to visit that site in a 24-hour period. I mean, we just picked a random day, and the numbers ended up being less. They have 103 docks, and then they have another 40 or 50 grade level doors. So it just goes to show that, it depends on the tenant. A lot of their tenants don't need the docks, but they have it for future uses.
Yeah, the whole thing with and I've put dock doors into facilities that didn't have them or expanded them before as well. So it's not that hard to do if you want to do that. So further reducing that number to, I know there were 3 parcels, which was 6 doors, but if we were to bring it down to even 8 per building, we're still further reducing.
Let me provide a clarification. So what the zoning ordinance defines as a truck terminal is that when there is more than 6 heavy-duty vehicles on site at any one time. It's not, Rob mentioned it in his presentation to the commission, that it's not really necessarily the number of truck bays that we're regulating. It's the number of heavy trucks on site at any one time. If it gets a little complicated, because now we have 4 buildings, and really the way the code is written, it says on site. So I may have spoken in error earlier when I said 6 per building. That's not necessarily accurate. It's really 6 heavy trucks on site. The number of doors are really kind of irrelevant. What the number of doors do it increases the capacity of the site to accommodate these heavy trucks. And so, having 100 of them, that means you can accommodate 100 heavy trucks on site at any one time, as opposed to 6, which is what the code sets the standard at. It doesn't say you can't go above and beyond that, but to do that, you have to go through this process that we're dealing with tonight, the conditional use permit. So it's not like having a truck terminal not permitted by the zoning ordinance. It is. It's just a conditionally permitted use, not a use that's allowed by right.
Okay. What's the number? I like the idea of having a number stated on the conditional use permit, but then they have the ability to come back once they get a tenant and be able to talk a little bit more about this company needs to have 10 or whatever it is, 16 or whatever it's going to end up being, because that's your tenant.
Yeah, and that was always on the table, that, that they could come back and get the full 100 and whatever it was, 114. So That was always in play. So if we squeeze it down to, I don't know, 8 per building, as you get a tenant that has a desire for more spaces, it sounds like that's achievable according to how Jay described it. So I don't know, 8. 10. It's your idea. I don't want to steal your idea.
It's also kind of like once you get tenants in place and the neighborhood starts to see what's going on with your buildings and how beautiful they're going to be and the landscaping and everything else that's going to happen out there, it's going to start to soften your relationships, I think, too. It's just the first initial change is always hard, but as things kind of start to play out, I mean, who knows, when you wanted it the 17 in one of the buildings because it's a great company, maybe the neighborhood will be going, yeah, we want that company here too, so we're stoked on that idea of 17. You know what I mean? It's just, we don't know yet. It's the future. Giving you the option in the future is important because you're a very good, applicant. We want you to stay in Oceanside. We want you to do more, and we appreciate what you're doing. And so, yeah, if we can say...
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you reduce that opportunity... And anybody that's going to come in there to lease, if they want to increase their capacity, knows that they have the ability to take out one. It's a tilt-up building. They can take those sections out and put a dock door.
When we glass them in quite often as well. So a lot of the docks that we end up building, when we do get the higher end tenant, it's nice natural light for them in the back, but they're not truck terminals anymore. Right. They're glassed in dock doors. So the only thing I would ask is we have 4 buildings. One of them's a little bit larger than the others, and so maybe it's 8, 8, 8, 10. Just one building's quite a bit bigger. So because usually with the way we look at it, it's how many docks do you have per square foot? Yeah. And so obviously this would be one of the lowest dock counts for industrial buildings in the county, but something that we would be willing to do to be good neighbors.
Right.
So what are you guys talking about?
8, 8, 8, 10.
Well, Adam said 34, and so that's a reduction from...
Yeah, 8, 8, 8, 10.
And I can understand what you're looking at as well, and I think that makes some sense. Again, for everybody else's perspective on this as well, you raised a great point. Just because there's a dock door there doesn't mean there's going to be a truck in it. It depends on the company that's leasing the space. Right. If they're a distribution company, they want every one of those doors filled. They want to run it 24/7, and they want to do those things. So we have some challenges with that. But if you reduce that additional opportunity for them to not have as many dock door spaces, it generally, and you've got a manufacturing facility as well, it's looking at that. And I've also worked around a lot of, in supply chain, a lot of different facilities that really don't have a significant, that are mixed-use manufacturing distribution, don't have a lot of trips per day just based on what you've got to produce in that space and what you can get into a semi. It's just not, the throughput just isn't there a lot of the time, so you're not going to see a significant amount of additional truck traffic. But I think if we can reduce those doors, it helps.
Commissioner Rosales.
Okay, just for clarification, Sergio, you might have already covered this. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
If we condition the approval of this for a lower number, say 34, so 8, 8, 8, and 10, to be clear, if the applicant has a tenant later on who needs an additional 10 on one of the buildings, they have to come back to this body for an adjustment to the CUP each and every time, or can they bundle them? Explain how that process would work after tonight.
Certainly. So we have to answer your question, Commissioner Rosales, we have conditions, a couple conditions that would have to be modified to accommodate this change if the applicant's willing to accept it. And so it would be a revision not only to the conditional use permit, but also be a revision to the development plan, because the conditions lock in the design basically as you see them today, as they've been presented to the commission. And part of that locking in is that we have 56 truck bays, and the condition reads, no additional truck bays shall be permitted unless a revision to the development plan and conditional use permit is approved by the planning commission. So, but by locking in a lower number of truck bays,
Same
would
process.
require them to come back for the same process to increase that number beyond what gets approved, if anything gets approved tonight.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Going back to my other, Sergio, the other question that I had about the roll-ups, and I understand that we're building a spec facility here to do all that. The concern, I think, with vehicle traffic in and of itself, not just heavy vehicles, is the number of other potential light vehicles that could be used for other distribution purposes. Are there any restrictions? You kind of answered me, but I just want to clarify. Are there any other restrictions in place, given the CUP or any other licensing requirements that would have to have a business identify what that intended use is? And is there a way to ensure that we have a review of that process so that it's looked at by the city, whether that's the planning department or the commission or both, to say this fits within the parameters of what we're looking at there. Again, I think the overarching concern that most of the people voiced tonight was overall truck traffic. Thinking large semis, I think that number is going to be less than what we would anticipate. But the unintended consequence of having a significantly larger light vehicle fleet with 500-plus parking spaces that don't need to accommodate a semi, that could accommodate a light vehicle, create those other potential challenges of congestion on a very already congested thoroughfare.
So, Vice Chair Malik, to answer your question, condition number 21, I think, would cover that. That's the condition that requires the preparation of a facilities management plan, which, among other things, that requirement would be to come up with a good neighbor policy with a point of contact to respond to issues regarding business operations or site conditions. Policies for preventing or reducing nuisances, including vehicle routes, number of trips, vehicle idling, backup alarms, facility noise, and light spillage. Protocol and anticipated response time to complaints and enforcement procedures. So I think that's where we would have the opportunity to understand what a future tenant's needs might be and how many vehicle trips they might be producing.
So then each tenant would have to have a facilities plan as part of the conditional use permit for this, so it would be addressed.
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
But I think there's a point of clarification that's required if the applicant is agreeable to reducing the number of truck bays to a number. I think the whole number was 34. Would the planning commission have any issue with transferring truck bays between one building or another? So as an example, one building might need 16 and the other ones would use the balance of it.
No, I don't. I think it's when we're looking at what the other alternatives, and appreciate the ability for you all to take a look at this and understand. I think you do want to be a good neighbor. You guys have put some really good facilities into the community here, and we do want to support growth, smart growth. Again, we're trying to reach a way that we can better manage and mitigate things that are concerns of the community, and we appreciate everybody's comments this evening. Thanks.
So can I get a motion out of one of you two?
How do we just like, sir, we're going to.
There's two separate motions.
There's like
We need a motion for
there's
the
the EIR, which is now
first.
has a different amount of truck, trips in there. We
yeah.
could certify it, but we have to, can we do that even though it's, yes?
We can certify it, Commissioner Obama. What the EIR has analyzed is the original project.
Yeah.
What was called, the proposal was 114. So presumably by reducing the number of truck bays available, we're reducing potential impacts.
Then I would make the first motion then, that we'd like to certify the environmental impact report and adopt the associated findings of fact and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the MMRP, of course, reduced with our little truck bay thing we just did tonight, by adopting Planning Commission Resolution number 2025P05.
Point of clarification, Chair, do we have to specify that number of reduced, in the motion, reduced truck bays?
Chair or Commissioner Rosales, not for the motion to certify the EIR, but it's certainly for the motion to approve the project if that's the
Thank you.
Planning Commission's intent.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Please vote.
Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously.
next one.
Okay. I got to have the, give me the paper so I can read it.
Right here. Sorry.
Okay, I make the motion that we approve a development plan conditional use permit and variance for the multi-building and truck bay reduction alternative MBTRA project by adopting planning commission resolution with findings and conditions, with the additional condition that there be 34 truck bays in the facility.
Vice Chair Malik, if I may add just the specifics so we get it on the record. We would specifically be amending condition number 1B to go from 56 to 34 truck bays, and condition number 11 to go from 56 to 34 truck bays.
Concur.
If I could add to that motion, that it would be at the discretion of the applicant to allocate those truck bays however they saw fit.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
All right, that's perfect. I would second.
With that, I'll
Yeah, you gonna second?
go ahead.
Okay. Please vote.
All right.
Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously.
Hope they're happy.
Okay.
Other business?
Other business. I think the next order of business is city planners commissioner reports.
Yeah. They should be.
Folks, if you could please quietly exit. We still have some business to conduct once the public hearing is over. Thank you very much.
Just one? Maybe I take my thing, my whole idea.
I got all our samples. You may need to go to the flying pit.
I gotta get literally wrong. Last night. My aunt. So she's 98. But anyway, and I gotta get up. I gotta get in LA at 6 tomorrow. So 6:30. No, I'm going to bed tonight.
I'm stoked, yeah, I'm excited.
Rob, thank you. That was great.
Good job, Rob.
Hey, by the way, thanks. I'm glad your experience certainly helped. You guys were good. Hey, I think that was good.
No, that's good. It was, I like
that was.
I wanted to get there, but the way you got us there was great.
Yeah, no. Okay. Okay.
What?
I have no report. Vice Chair Mallett. Hey, Mallett.
It's gonna get appealed, are you serious? What do you want me to do?
Jay, do you have a report?
Oh.
I have no report.
Commissioner Rosales.
Zero.
Zero report. Commissioner Balma.
I have no report, but if someone appeals that, I'll be pretty upset out there.
Yeah.
You got to deal with an Italian.
Commissioner Dodds.
No report, and I'm scared of the
Commissioner
Italian.
Anthony.
No report.
Last but not least, Commissioner Ogden.
Do you have a report?
No report. Okay. Sergio.
Thank you, Chair Morrissey and Planning Commissioners. Thank you for wading through all the information tonight and making an informed decision. Real brief, upcoming Planning Commission items. It's likely that the meeting on March 10th will get canceled for lack of items for that date. On March 24th, we have tentatively scheduled review of a regular coastal permit for a new single-family home at 1934 South Pacific Street. Moving on to City Council, backing up to the meeting of February 5th, the council approved a regular coastal permit for 2 small rooftop decks at 151 South Meyer Street. Moving forward, on February 19th, staff will be taking forward recommendations to City Council for direction on storefront dispensaries. So that's been something that the Planning Division has been working on with our consultant, and we'll be taking forward recommendations for final direction from council. And then we'll be bringing those legislative actions that we have to implement to this body for a recommendation to City Council at some time after that. And then finally, on March 19th, we'll be having a workshop on the general plan update. So there'll be a special meeting just for a general plan update. That concludes my report.
What was that date?
March 19th.
Oh, nice.
General plan workshop?
Yes.
That'll be here?
It'll be here in the City Council chambers, yes.
All right.
I have a question. You're finished with your presentation, correct, Sergio? Okay. I have a question about the general plan and also about the Southmore Hills Community Plan. Because I talked to some person in the know today, and they said that possible city council member would like to just take the whole thing and throw it out and start over with our Southmore Hills Community Plan. Is that true? Have you heard anything like that from a city council person that's bragging about it?
Staff has not been given any direction
Maybe I'll go
or
talk to
any
that city
inclination
council
that the
member
community
then.
plan.
Yeah, because it's like with all the work and time and effort and meetings and workshops and money that's been spent, to just say because you can, because you're a city council member, hey, let's just start over, is like, you got some explaining to do.
We would need an executive board.
Yeah, executive board.
Mary Sue, on the meeting on the 19th, would you?
The Italian's coming out.
Would you be able to send an email reminder to us on that? Yeah, that way, try to put it on the calendar, but it's one of those things, it's helpful. Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Wow, what a meeting. That was amazing.
Great job.